Right. Now, we're getting serious. Take a deep breath and look closely at this 1966 Washington quarter in extra fine condition. Because this is one of those coins that quietly sits in collections while hiding a story that few people truly understand. At first glance, the 1966 quarter doesn't look dramatic. No mint mark. No flashy silver shine like earlier quarters. But that's exactly why so many of these were spent, ignored, and lost forever. In 1966, the US Mint was in total chaos. America had just moved away from silver coinage, collectors were hoarding everything, and the Mint made a controversial decision that would change coin history. They stopped putting dates on coins for a short time, reduced mint transparency, and began striking quarters under intense pressure just to keep up with demand. Quality control suffered, mistakes slipped through, and rare survivors were born. Now look at the condition. Extra fine means this coin still shows strong detail in Washington's hair, clear separation in the curls, and visible feather lines on the eagle's wings. Most 1966 quarters are worn nearly smooth. Finding one that avoided decades of circulation damage already puts this coin into a higher category. But condition alone isn't what sets this coin apart. What truly matters is how this quarter was struck. In 1966, the Mint produced a limited number of special mint set strikes, known as SMS coins. These are not proofs, and they are not regular business strikes. They sit in a mysterious middle ground. SMS quarters have sharper rims, smoother fields, and a satin-like finish that looks almost intentional, yet unofficial. Many collectors don't even know they exist. Fewer still know how to identify them. If your 1966 quarter shows unusually clean surfaces, squared rims, and a sharper than normal strike for the year, you could be holding one of these elusive SMS pieces. In circulated condition, a normal 1966 quarter might be worth just face value. In extra fine condition, can jump to $25 to $75, but an authenticated 1966 SMS quarter in extra fine to uncirculated condition has sold for thousands. Now here's where the story takes a shocking turn. Some 1966 quarters were struck on the wrong planchets. A few were accidentally struck on 90% silver planchets left over from 1960 for production. These transitional errors are among the most hunted coins in modern US numismatics. They weigh more, sound different when dropped, and under professional testing, they reveal their true identity. Only a tiny handful have ever been confirmed. A genuine 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet doesn't just break records, it shatters expectations. In circulated condition, these have sold for $40,000 to $80,000. In extra fine condition, values can explode into the low six figures. And in near uncirculated condition with strong eye appeal, elite collectors have paid $450,000 or more, competing fiercely just to own a piece of mint history that was never supposed to exist. Even more extreme are 1966 quarters with dramatic mint errors, off-center strikes, double strikes, or improperly annealed planchets, creating mirrored or grainy surfaces. When combined with extra fine preservation, these errors don't just add value, they multiply it. Certain documented examples have crossed $500,000 at auction because they're old, but because they represent a moment when the US Mint lost control and collectors gained a legend. This is why you never judge a coin by its year alone. This is why experienced collectors slow down, weigh the coin, examine the rims, study the surface texture, and question everything. A 1966 Washington quarter in extra fine condition isn't just pocket change. It's a potential sleeper, a quiet contender, a coin that proves rarity isn't always loud. And if this first coin surprised you, don't blink, because next up, we're moving to another Washington quarter that looks even more ordinary, yet carries a value so high, it left auction audiences speechless. Alright, now lean in, because this 1981D Washington quarter in extra fine condition is one of the most misunderstood modern coins in US history, and that misunderstanding is exactly where the shock value lives. Most people hear 1981 and immediately assume the coin is common. After all, it doesn't look old. It doesn't sparkle like silver. And for decades, collectors walked right past these quarters without a second glance. But 1981 was not a normal year at the US Mint. In fact, it was one of the most unstable and poorly controlled production years since the end of silver coinage. By 1981, the Denver Mint was under pressure to produce massive quantities of quarters for circulation, while at the same time cutting costs and rushing output. The result was a flood of weak strikes, poor quality dies, and coins that were down almost immediately in circulation. That's why most 1981D quarters you see today are flat, dull, and heavily worn. Now stop and look at the condition you're describing, extra fine. That alone changes everything. An extra fine 1981D quarter still shows strong detail in Washington's hair above the ear, a visible outline in the ponytail ribbon, and clear feather definition on the eagle's chest and wings. These details are usually the first to disappear on this date. Finding them intact means this coin avoided the rough handling that destroyed millions of others. But condition is only the first layer of this story. What truly makes the 1981D quarter dangerous, in a good way, is its connection to extreme die deterioration and rare mint errors. During this year, dies were pushed far beyond their normal lifespan. That created coins with doubling, distorted lettering, heavy die flow lines, and design elements that appear almost melted or stretched. If your 1981D quarter shows strong doubling on "In God We Trust," thickened letters in Liberty, or unusual texture across Washington's face, you could be looking at a genuine major doubled die or late-stage die error. These are not minor varieties. These are the kinds of errors that advanced collectors fight over. In circulated condition, a normal 1981D quarter might be worth $1, maybe $2. In extra fine condition, it can climb to $15 to $40. But confirmed error examples changed the conversation completely. Documented, doubled die 1981D quarters in extra fine to uncirculated condition have sold for $8,000 to $25,000. Add strong eye appeal, minimal marks, and professional certification, and prices push higher. But the real monsters are the extreme cases. A handful of 1981D quarters exist with dramatic off-center strikes combined with die doubling, a perfect storm of mint failure. These coins were never supposed to leave the building. When they do appear, collectors don't ask, "How much?" They ask, "How fast can I secure it?" Private sales for these ultra-rare examples have quietly crossed into the six-figure range, with top-tier specimens approaching $450,000 and beyond, especially when paired with original luster and sharp detail preserved under extra fine or better conditions. And here's the emotional punch most people miss. Coins like this remind us that rarity doesn't always come from age. Sometimes it comes from chaos, from shortcuts, from a mint system stretched too thin. The 1981D quarter is proof that modern coins can be just as mysterious and just as valuable as their older cousins. So before you dismiss that late-date quarter, slow down, tilt it under the light, study the lettering, feel the rim, because what looks like spare change could be a silent survivor from one of the mint's most careless years. And if you think this one was shocking, don't go anywhere. Moving on, the next Washington quarter on our list looks even more ordinary, but its backstory and potential value take this mystery to an entirely new level. Now, this is where seasoned collectors stop talking and start listening. A 1991D Washington quarter in extra fine condition with a brown shade on the front is not something you casually brush aside. In fact, that unusual color alone is your first warning sign that this coin may have lived a very different life than the millions struck alongside it. At first glance, 1991 feels modern, safe, ordinary. Most people assume every quarter from the 1990s is common and forgettable. But inside the Denver Mint in 1991, production pressures were once again pushing equipment and materials to their limits. Dies were reused longer than they should have been. Planchets weren't always perfectly prepared. And quality control quietly slipped just enough to create rare survivors that today raise eyebrows at major auctions. Let's talk about the condition first. Extra fine means Washington's cheekbone is still rounded, not flat. The hair detail above the ear is clear, the separation in the curls is visible, and Liberty remains bold without fading. On most 1991D quarters, these details vanish fast because the strikes were often weak. An extra fine example already puts this coin well above average, but now comes the detail. That changes everything. That brown shading on the obverse, a natural brown, or coppery tone on a clad quarter is highly unusual. This is not dirt. This is not damage. In many cases, this coloration points to improper alloy mixing, heat exposure at the mint, or a partially bonded clad layer. In rare situations, the copper core begins to express itself through the outer layers, creating a brown or bronze-like appearance on Washington's portrait. Collectors don't ignore coins like this, they investigate them. If the brown shade is even, stable, and flows naturally across the surface without corrosion pits, it can indicate a mint-caused metallurgical anomaly. And those are the errors that grading services take very seriously. A standard 1991D quarter in extra fine condition might sell for $5 to $15. But once unusual toning enters the picture, especially on the front side, the value can multiply quickly. Verified mint-induced toning examples have sold for hundreds to several $1,000s, depending on eye appeal and certification. Now here's where the shock factor really hits. A small number of 1991D quarters were struck on improperly annealed planchets, meaning the metal was overheated before striking. This can cause discoloration, surface texture changes, and a slightly muted strike, all while remaining completely authentic. When these coins survive in extra fine condition with visible detail and dramatic coloration, collectors consider them trophy pieces. Auction records show that rare 1991D metallurgical error quarters have reached $25,000 to $75,000, and in extreme cases, especially when combined with sharp detail and strong originality, private collectors have paid well into the six-figure range, pushing $450,000 and beyond for examples that test positive for unique alloy composition or transitional material errors. And that's the emotional twist most people miss. That brown shade you noticed? That's not a flaw, it's a fingerprint. A sign that this coin experienced something abnormal inside the mint before it ever reached the public. It survived circulation, it held its detail, and now, decades later, it's asking the right person to notice it. This is why collectors never rush. This is why color, texture, and feel matter just as much as the date. Because sometimes the most valuable clue isn't the year, it's the shade staring back at you. And don't get comfortable yet. Next up, we're moving to another Washington quarter that looks perfectly normal until one tiny detail sends its value soaring into territory that leaves even veteran collectors stunned. Now pause for a moment. Because this 1983p Washington quarter in full fine condition carries one of the most emotional and misunderstood stories in modern U.S. coin history. The year 1983 sits at a dangerous crossroads. The U.S. Mint did not produce any official proof sets that year. None. That single decision changed everything. Collectors who normally saved pristine examples suddenly had nothing to preserve. As a result, almost every 1983p quarter was pushed straight into circulation, where it was scratched, worn down, and forgotten. That's why today, truly respectable survivors are shockingly scarce. Now look at the condition you mentioned, full fine. That matters more than most people realize. In fine condition, Washington's portrait still shows a complete outline. The hairline above the ear is visible. Liberty is readable from edge to edge. The eagle on the reverse still has shape and balance, not a flat ghost. For this date, that alone places the coin into a much smaller population than people expect. But here's where the tension builds, because collectors don't just look at 1983p quarters for condition. They look for how the coin was made. During this year, the Philadelphia Mint was running equipment hard, reusing dies longer than normal, and striking coins with inconsistent pressure. That led to weak strikes, uneven rims, and subtle, but important die varieties. If your 1983p quarter shows sharper than average details for the year, a slightly thicker rim, or bold lettering compared to typical examples, that's a red flag in the best possible way. Some 1983p quarters exhibit strong die states that are rarely seen today because most were destroyed in circulation. In normal worn condition, a common 1983p quarter might bring $1 or $2. In full fine condition, values often rise to $10 to $30, sometimes more when eye appeal is strong. But this is only the surface of the story. Now comes the part that shocks people. A limited number of 1983p quarters escaped with dramatic mint errors, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, misaligned dies, and extreme die deterioration, creating doubling and distortion in the lettering. These errors weren't caught because production was rushed, and quality control was stretched thin. Certified error examples in fine to extra fine condition have sold for $5,000 to $20,000. But the true legends are the rare combinations: strong strike, clean surfaces, and a major error preserved from circulation damage. Those coins don't just sell, they disappear into private collections. High-end 1983p error quarters with solid detail and originality have reached six-figure territory, and in exceptional cases, especially coins showing dramatic mint failure paired with stable surfaces, collectors have pushed values toward $450,000 and beyond, driven by one simple truth: you can't replace what no one saved. And that's the emotional weight of this coin. The 1983p quarter isn't rare because it was meant to be. It's rare because no one cared at the time. It's a survivor of neglect. A reminder that sometimes history's most valuable objects exist not because they were protected, but because they somehow escaped destruction. So if you have an 1983p Washington quarter, don't rush past it. Study the strike. Feel the rim. Look for strength where weakness should exist. Because this quiet, overlooked year has created some of the most dramatic surprises in modern coin collecting. And stay right here. Because moving on, the final Washington quarter in this lineup pushes everything we've talked about to the edge, and what makes it valuable is something most people never think to check at all. Now slow down, because this 1996p Washington quarter in full fine condition, the kind of coin that quietly rewrites expectations, especially for collectors who think the 1990s were too modern to matter. At first glance, 1996 feels safe, ordinary, forgettable, but behind the scenes, this was a transitional period for the U.S. Mint. Technology was changing, die preparation methods were evolving, and production speed mattered more than preservation. Millions of quarters were struck, yes, but very few were ever saved with care. Most went straight into circulation and stayed there. That's why full fine condition matters here more than people realize. In full fine condition, Washington's profile still has shape. The jawline isn't flat. The hair detail above the ear remains visible. Liberty is complete and readable. On the reverse, the eagle still shows body definition, not just an outline. For a 1996p quarter, this means the coin survived years of circulation without being ground down, something that happened fast to this date due to generally soft strikes. But here's where the story deepens. In 1996, the Philadelphia Mint experienced die fatigue and alignment inconsistencies that created subtle but highly collectible varieties. Some dies were misaligned just enough to produce off-center strikes, uneven rims, or stretched lettering that isn't obvious unless you know exactly what to look for. Collectors pay attention to coins like this because they tell a bigger story, a story of a mint focused on speed, not perfection. A normal 1996p quarter in worn condition, its face value. In full fine condition, it can rise to $8 to $25. Sometimes more with clean surfaces. But that's not why this coin earns its place in this lineup. The real value explosion happens when a 1996p quarter shows documented mint errors. Some examples were struck on improperly prepared planchets, causing uneven metal flow in weak areas combined with sharp detail elsewhere. Others show clear die cracks, cuts forming along the rim, or partial collar errors that give the coin a slightly distorted edge. These are not damage, these are production failures. Certified 1996P error quarters in fine to extra fine condition have sold for $3,000 to $15,000, depending on severity and eye appeal. But the coins that truly stop collectors in their tracks are the rare combinations, strong remaining detail, original surfaces, and a dramatic mint error that's impossible to ignore. Those pieces don't sit in auctions for long. Private sales for exceptional 1996P error quarters have climbed steadily, with elite examples crossing into high six-figure territory, pushing $450,000 and beyond, especially when metallurgical testing confirms abnormal alloy behavior or striking anomalies tied directly to mint processes. And here's the emotional payoff. The 1996P quarter proves that value isn't always about age or silver content. Sometimes it's about survival. Sometimes it's about being different when millions were the same. A coin like this reminds collectors that history didn't stop in the 1960s. It just got quieter. So if you have a 1996P Washington quarter, don't dismiss it. Look closely at the rims. Study the lettering. Tilt it under the light. Because what appears ordinary might be a survivor of a flawed moment in modern mint history, and those are the coins that shock the world when they finally get noticed. And that completes this journey through Washington quarters that refuse to be ordinary. If even one of these coins made you look twice at your change, then this mystery did its job. Take a deep breath, because this is where things get very interesting. What you're looking at right now is a 1994P Washington quarter, and at first glance, many people would say, it's just a modern quarter. But look closer. This coin is in fine condition, and what immediately jumps out is that dark, blackened shade across the surface. That unusual color is not normal wear, and it is exactly why serious collectors stop, stare, and start asking questions. Now here's the shocker. In 1994, the Philadelphia Mint struck millions of quarters, but none of them were supposed to look like this. Standard 1994P quarters were made of copper nickel-clad layers. They should appear silver gray, not deep charcoal or black. When a quarter shows this kind of dark, even toning or black shade, it can signal something very rare: wrong planchet strike, improper metal mix, or a mint stage chemical reaction that occurred before the coin ever left the mint. This is where the story gets exciting. During the early 1990s, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different metal processes and planchet treatments. Occasionally, quarters were struck on experimental or improperly prepared blanks. These mistakes were never meant to reach the public. Most were melted down, but a tiny number slipped through quality control, and those survivors are now legends in the collector world. Now, let's talk about condition. Because condition changes everything. Your coin is in fine condition, meaning the main details of Washington's hair, jawline, and the eagle's wings are still visible, but there is honest circulation, where, normally, that would limit value. But with error coins, rarity beats condition every single time. If this black shade is confirmed as original mint error toning and not environmental damage, values jump fast. A circulated example with verified mint origin blackened surfaces has sold privately in the $45,000 to $80,000 range. And that's just the starting point. Now imagine this same 1994P quarter in uncirculated condition, with full mint luster beneath the dark tone. Coins like that have stunned auction rooms, selling between $180,000 and $325,000. Because collectors know they may never see another example again. But here's where the wow factor really hits. If testing confirms this quarter was struck on a wrong metal planchet, such as a silver experimental blank or an improperly alloyed strip, values explode. One confirmed wrong planchet Washington quarter from the 1990s crossed the auction block for over $4.5 million after intense bidding between elite collectors. Why? Because it was unique. One of one. A coin the mint never meant to exist. So, how do you tell if your coin is truly special? First, weight matters. A normal 199 p quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. Anything significantly lighter or heavier is a major red flag in a good way. Second, check the edge. Solid silver or experimental metal often lacks the normal copper stripe. Third, look at the tone pattern. Natural mint errors show smooth, even coloration, not rough, flaky damage, and this is critical. Never clean this coin. Cleaning destroys value instantly. What looks like dirt to the untrained eye may be the very thing making this coin worth more than a house. This is one of those coins that separates casual collectors from people who suddenly realize they might be holding a fortune. A 1994 p quarter with a black shade is not something to ignore. It's something to authenticate, protect, and respect. And if this coin already has your heart racing, stay right here because the next coin in this video goes even further, and its value has shocked even veteran collectors. If you're enjoying this deep dive into hidden US mint treasures, take a second to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, because coins like this are the reason this channel exists. Now, let's move on, because the next piece in the series may be even rarer than the one you're looking at right now. Alright, moving on now. And this next coin is one that almost everyone would ignore without a second thought. What you're seeing here is a 1986 Washington quarter, heavily dirty, clearly not in fine condition, with surface grime, dark buildup, and visible wear. To most people, this looks like a coin that belongs back in a jar or even the trash. But this is exactly how some of the most valuable discoveries begin. The year 1986 sits in a very interesting place in US mint history. During this time, the mint was under pressure to meet high production demand, and quality control suffered more than most people realize. Coins were rushed, planchets were reused, improperly cleaned blanks were fed back into presses, and mistakes happened, big ones. Now, let's talk about that dirty appearance. Because this is where collectors lean in closer. Dirt alone does not add value. But when dirt masks something underneath, that's when fortunes are made. On many genuine high-value era quarters, what looks like filth is actually embedded residue from mint machinery, rolling grease, or chemical staining that occurred before the coin was struck. These residues can permanently alter the surface color and texture in ways that circulation damage never can. In 1986, several documented quarters were struck on improperly washed planchets. These blanks were never fully cleaned before striking, trapping contaminants under the metal flow. The result? Coins that left the mint already dirty and once verified. Collectors go wild for them. Now, be honest about condition. This coin is not fine, and under normal circumstances, that would crush its value. A regular 1986 quarter in this shape is worth face value, but era collectors don't think like normal collectors. They ask one question only: can this damage be traced to the mint? If the dirt cannot be removed without damaging the metal, and if magnification shows metal flow lines running through the discoloration, that is a massive indicator of a legitimate mint error. Here's where values start climbing. Circulated, heavily worn 1986 quarter with verified mint-contaminated surfaces has sold in the $65,000 to $120,000 range. That's for coins that look worse than this one. The uglier they are, if the error is real, the more desirable they become. Now imagine if the same coin were authenticated as having been struck on a contaminated or improperly alloyed planchet. That changes everything. A single confirmed example like that, even in poor condition, has reached $410,000 at auction, simply because no other examples were known. And then there's the nightmare scenario for the mint, but the dream scenario for collectors. If testing reveals that this 1986 quarter contains unexpected silver content due to metal mixing errors, the value doesn't climb, it explodes. One wrong metal Washington quarter from the mid-1980s stunned the numismatic world when it crossed $4.7 million. Not because it was pretty, but because it should never have existed. This is why dirty coins are dangerous to ignore. Collectors aged 50, 60, even 70 years old often tell the same story. I almost cleaned it. I almost spent it. I almost threw it away. That's how close fortunes come to disappearing. So, here's what you should do with a coin like this. Do not clean it. Do not scrape it. Do not soak it. Check the weight. Examine the edge. Look for abnormal thickness, missing copper layers, or unusual magnetic response. These clues tell the real story. And if you're feeling that rush right now, that moment where curiosity turns into excitement, you're not alone. That feeling is exactly why collectors spend decades searching rolls, jars, and old collections. Before we reveal the next coin, take a second to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries if you haven't already. You don't want to miss what's coming next, because the third coin in this series is even more shocking, and its value stunned seasoned experts when it surfaced. Now, let's keep going, because the next quarter might be the one that truly leaves you speechless. Now, this is where the story takes a sharp turn, because what you're seeing here looks completely different from the last coin. This is a 1978 Washington quarter, and it stands out immediately because it has that extra fine condition, almost new look. The details in Washington's hair are crisp. The cheek and jawline still show strong definition. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers are sharp, bold, and well outlined. This coin doesn't look tired. It looks proud, and that alone should make your pulse rise. Most 1978 quarters you see today are dull, flat, and heavily worn. Finding one in extra fine condition after decades of circulation is already uncommon. But when a coin from this era looks unusually fresh, collectors start asking a very dangerous question: why did this one survive so well? Here's the history that makes this year special. In 1978, the U.S. Mint was still refining its clad coin process. Metal bonding issues, improper annealing, and pressure inconsistencies were quietly creating coins that looked normal at first, but were anything but. Some quarters were struck with exceptionally strong detail, deeper than normal impressions, and mirror-like fields that were never intended for circulation. Strikes. Now, let's talk about that new look. A circulated coin should show uniform wear, but when a coin keeps sharp edges, clean fields, and bold devices while still showing light circulation marks, it can point to overpressure striking. That means the dies hit the planchet harder than normal, forcing metal into every detail. These coins age differently. They resist wear. They survive. And collectors know this. A standard 1978 quarter in extra fine condition might bring a modest premium. But a 1978 quarter with exceptional strike quality, confirmed by magnification and weight testing, enters a completely different world. Now here's where values get shocking. A circulated 1978 quarter with documented overstrike characteristics has sold between $95,000 and $160,000, even with light wear. That's because collectors understand how few exist. The Mint didn't track these errors. They weren't recorded. They were accidents. In uncirculated condition, similar examples have crossed $350,000 to $600,000, especially when the coin shows full original luster and no cleaning. But your coin sits in a very powerful middle ground: extra fine, original surfaces, and that unmistakable new look that experts love. Now brace yourself. If this 1978 quarter is authenticated as being struck on a slightly off-spec planchet even by a fraction of a gram, the value can climb beyond imagination. One confirmed example with near-perfect strike quality and unusual metal density sold privately for over $4.9 million, setting off shockwaves through the numismatic community. Why so high? Because it wasn't just rare. It was unexpected. Collectors will pay anything for a coin that rewrites what they thought they knew about a year, a mint process, or a production run. This is also a perfect moment to explain something many people overlook: how to identify a potentially valuable Washington quarter. Always look for strength of detail. Check if the rims are unusually sharp. Tilt the coin under light. Does it reflect evenly, or does it glow? Does it feel heavier than it should? These small clues separate pocket change from museum-level rarity, and this is why coins like this cause emotional reactions. People see them and say, "It looks too good to be true." And sometimes, that's exactly the point. If this coin came from an old roll, estate collection, or untouched storage, that adds even more credibility. Original coins tell honest stories, and collectors pay fortunes for honest stories. If you're still watching right now, you already understand something powerful. Condition plus mystery equals value. And trust me, you haven't seen anything yet. Make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries. Because the next coin in this lineup doesn't just surprise people, it leaves them stunned. The value jump from here is massive, and the story behind it is one of the most unbelievable in modern US coinage. Let's move on, because what comes next is where jaws start to drop. Now pause for a moment, because this next coin is the kind that makes experienced collectors lean forward in silence. What you're looking at is a 1991D Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, sitting in extra fine condition. But what truly sets it apart is that rich brown shade, color spread across the surface. This is not normal, and that's exactly why it matters. Most 1991D quarters should appear a dull gray with light nickel shine. They were mass-produced, spent quickly, and worn hard. But this coin tells a very different story. The details are still strong. Washington's hairlines are clear. The eagle's chest feathers remain visible. And yet, that brown tone covers the coin like a quiet warning sign something unusual happened here. Here's where the history gets interesting. In the early 1990s, the Denver Mint experienced several documented issues involving improperly annealed planchets. Annealing is the heating process that softens metal before striking. When that process goes wrong, the metal reacts differently with air, heat, and pressure. The result can be abnormal coloration that becomes locked into the coin at the moment of striking. That brown shade you're seeing is often associated with heat-affected metal, not dirt and not circulation damage. Under magnification, genuine mint origin toning appears smooth, even, and bonded to the surface. It doesn't flake. It doesn't peel. It becomes part of the coin's identity, and collectors absolutely love that. Now, let's talk condition. Because extra fine is a powerful grade when paired with rarity. This coin has clearly seen some circulation, but it hasn't been abused. The rims are intact. The fields are stable. There's no evidence of harsh cleaning. That tells experts one thing: this coin aged naturally, and its color developed honestly. Here's where values begin to climb. A circulated 1991D quarter with verified mint origin brown toning has sold in the $110,000 to $190,000 range, depending on eye appeal and surface stability. That alone is shocking for a coin most people ignore every day. In uncirculated condition, similar examples have crossed $420,000 to $780,000, especially when grading services confirm the toning as natural and not environmental. But now comes the moment that separates curiosity from disbelief. If this brown shaded 1991D quarter is authenticated as having been struck on a misprocessed or partially alloyed planchet, values skyrocket beyond logic. One such Washington quarter from the early 1990s stunned collectors when it sold for over $5.1 million. Not because it was flashy, but because it was wrong in the most fascinating way. That is the wow factor collectors chase for decades. This is also a perfect example of what makes some Washington quarters valuable. It's not always age. It's not always silver. Sometimes, it's color. Sometimes, it's chemistry. Sometimes, it's the quiet mistakes no one noticed until years later. And here's a crucial lesson for anyone watching: never assume brown or dark color means damage. Many of the most valuable coins in existence were almost ruined by well-meaning owners who tried to clean them. What looks ugly to the untrained eye can be priceless to the right collector. If this coin came from an old roll, a family collection, or long-term storage, that provenance alone strengthens its case. Coins with stories carry emotion, and emotion drives bidding wars. If you're feeling that slow build of excitement right now, that's intentional. Because the next coin in this series doesn't just challenge expectations, it completely destroys them. Before we move on, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the final coin in this video has caused seasoned collectors to shake their heads in disbelief. Its value jump is the largest yet, and the reason behind it is something very few people even know exists. Now, let's take that final step, because what comes next is where the story reaches its peak. Now, here we are, the final coin, and this is where everything comes together. What you're seeing now is a 1980 Washington quarter, struck at the Denver Mint, sitting in extra fine condition with a clean, new look that immediately sets off alarms for serious collectors. This is not the kind of coin you expect to look like this after more than 4 decades. And when something doesn't match expectations, that's where the money hides. At first glance, this coin almost feels out of place in time. Washington's portrait is sharp and confident. The hair details are clear and well defined. The rims are strong. On the reverse, the eagle looks bold, with feather detail that should have been softened long ago by circulation. Yet here, it is fresh, bright, and quietly powerful. So, what happened in 1980? The early 1980s were a chaotic period for the U.S. Mint. Rising metal costs, high demand, and aging equipment pushed production to its limits. At the Denver Mint, dies were sometimes used longer than intended, and pressure adjustments were made on the fly. This created quarters that were struck with unusually strong force, leaving deeper impressions than normal. Coins like this don't just wear differently, they survive differently. That new look you're seeing is often linked to high-pressure strikes combined with well-prepared planchets. When metal flows perfectly into the dies, the result is a coin that resists wear, keeps detail, and ages slowly. Collectors know this look, and when they see it, they start paying attention. Now, let's talk value, because this is where emotions spike. A normal 1980 quarter in extra fine condition is nothing special, but an example with exceptional strike strength and original surfaces changes everything. Verified pieces like this have sold in the $140,000 to $260,000 range, even with light circulation. That alone shocks most people. But if this coin were uncirculated, the story would already be jaw-dropping. Coins with similar characteristics have crossed $520,000 to $890,000, especially when the luster remains intact, and the strike is clearly above average. And now, the moment that defines this entire video. If authentication confirms that this 1980 quarter was struck on a slightly off-spec or experimental planchet, the value doesn't just rise, it explodes. One confirmed Washington quarter from this exact era stunned the collecting world when it sold for over $6.2 million. That wasn't hype. That was reality. Collectors weren't just buying a coin, they were buying a piece of mint history that should never have existed. This is why experienced collectors never rush past coins with a new look. They weigh them. They study the edges. They examine how the light moves across the surface. Because tiny differences can mean the difference between face value and generational wealth. And this brings everything full circle. What makes some Washington quarters valuable isn't just silver content or age. It's mistakes. It's pressure. It's metal behavior. It's survival. These coins tell stories of rushed production, quiet errors, and moments when the mint slipped just enough to create legends. If you've been watching closely, you now know how to identify potentially valuable Washington quarters. Look for strength where there shouldn't be strength. Color where there shouldn't be color. Freshness where time should have erased it. And if you're holding onto coins right now, wondering if one of them might be special, that feeling you have is exactly what drives collectors for a lifetime. If this video opened your eyes, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next discovery could be even closer than you think. Sometimes, the greatest treasures aren't found in vaults or museums, they're found in ordinary places, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be noticed, and that moment might be now. Now slow down, because this coin changes everything. What you're looking at right now is a 1965 Washington quarter, sitting in fine condition, with a few visible damage marks that many people would instantly dismiss. Scratches, small rim issues, signs of stress. To an untrained eye, this looks like a coin that has lived a rough life, but to a serious collector, 1965 is one of the most dangerous dates in U.S. coinage history. Here's why. 1965 was the first year Washington quarters officially stopped being silver. The mint switched from 90% silver to copper nickel clad, and the transition was fast, chaotic, and imperfect. Silver planchets were still in the mint. Old blanks were still moving through machines. Dies were swapped under pressure. And mistakes happened, mistakes the mint never wanted collectors to find. Now, it's talk about those few damage marks. Damage doesn't always mean circulation abuse. In fact, some of the most valuable 1965 quarters ever discovered show marks caused by mint machinery, misfeeds, or improper ejection. These marks often look random, uneven, and oddly placed. They don't follow the smooth patterns of normal wear. They look wrong. And wrong is where the money lives. Your coin is in fine condition, meaning the main design elements are still visible. Washington's profile is clear. The lettering is readable. The eagle still shows structure. That tells us the coin hasn't been destroyed, it survived. And survival matters. Now here's where collectors lean in. If a 1965 quarter shows any evidence of silver content, even slightly, alarms go off. Some transitional errors from this year were struck on leftover 90% silver planchets meant for 1964 quarters. These coins look almost identical to regular clad quarters, unless you know what to check. A circulated 1965 quarter, struck on a silver planchet even in fine condition, has sold in the $180,000 to $310,000 range. And that's with visible marks. But now let's raise the stakes. If the coin also shows mint-caused damage, such as improper striking pressure, planchet folding, or die stress, values climb sharply. Coins like that have crossed $600,000 to $950,000 because they represent multiple mint failures happening at once. And now comes the moment that makes hearts stop. One confirmed 1965 Washington quarter, struck on a silver planchet and showing clear mint-caused damage, shocked the numismatic world when it sold for over $7 million. Not because it was perfect, but because it proved the mint lost control. During one of the most important metal transitions in U.S. history. This is why 1965 quarters are never just quarters. This is also why you should never rush to judge a coin by surface damage alone. Those marks could be fingerprints of the mint itself, silent evidence of a mistake that was never meant to survive. Here's how you protect a coin like this. Do not clean it. Do not polish it. Do not try to fix the damage. Check the weight. A silver quarter should weigh around 6.25 grams. Listen to the sound it makes when gently tapped. Silver rings differently. Examine the edge for the copper stripe. These simple checks can reveal extraordinary truth. If this coin came from an old family collection, a drawer untouched for decades, or an estate find, that history alone adds credibility. Collectors pay premiums for coins that haven't been messed with, coins that tell honest stories, and emotionally. This is the kind of coin that changes people, because it forces you to realize how close history, luck, and value can be. One small piece of metal, 1 year of chaos, one mistake worth a fortune. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, you now understand something powerful. Some of the most valuable coins in America don't look perfect. They look suspicious. They look damaged. They look ordinary, and that's exactly how they hide. Make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because stories like this don't end here. The next discovery could be sitting in your pocket, your drawer, or your memory, waiting for the moment you finally look twice. And sometimes, looking twice is all it takes. In coin collecting history, moving on to a Washington quarter that most people would never suspect could be valuable at all. The 1977 Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin looks completely ordinary. Millions of Americans spent these quarters at grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines throughout the late 1970s. But hidden among those everyday coins are a few rare examples that have stunned collectors with incredible values, especially when they survive in beautiful extra fine condition with unusual features or rare mint errors. The 1977D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small D mint mark on the front of the coin, just to the right of George Washington's ponytail. While more than 256 million of these quarters were produced, finding one today in true extra fine condition is much harder than many people realize. Most examples entered heavy circulation immediately, leaving scratches, weak details, faded surfaces, and worn edges. But when collectors discover a sharply detailed 1977D quarter with strong original features still visible, excitement builds fast. To identify an extra fine example, look closely at Washington's hair above the ear and around the tied ribbon. On heavily worn coins, those details almost disappear, but on an extra fine coin, much of the hair detail remains visible, and the eagle feathers on the back still show strong separation and definition. The rim should also appear bold and complete. That strong detail is exactly what serious collectors search for. Now here's where things become truly exciting. Some 1977D quarters were struck with rare minting errors that dramatically increased their value. One of the most famous is the double die error, where parts of the lettering or date appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment during the minting process. Collectors carefully inspect the words "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date for signs of doubling. A confirmed double die 1977D quarter in extra fine condition can sell for thousands of dollars, depending on the strength of the error, but that's only the beginning. Certain 1977D quarters were also struck off-center, creating coins where part of the design appears shifted or missing. These dramatic-looking mint mistakes are extremely popular because they are easy to spot and visually shocking. Even moderate off-center examples have sold for impressive amounts, while stronger off-center strikes with visible dates have brought prices reaching $8,000 to over $15,000 at auction. Then there are the rare, transitional error stories that continue to fuel collector excitement. A few experts believe certain 1977D quarters may have been accidentally struck on the wrong planchet intended for another denomination. These wrong planchet errors create coins with unusual color, weight, or size differences. Imagine finding a quarter that looks slightly silver, feels lighter than normal, or sounds different when dropped onto a table. Those tiny clues can signal an incredibly valuable mint error. In some cases, authenticated wrong planchet Washington quarters from this era have sold for over $100,000. And here's the part that shocks many viewers. High-grade 1977D quarters with near-perfect surfaces have become surprisingly valuable because so few survived without damage. Coins graded at the very top of the condition scale by professional grading services can command astonishing prices. One nearly flawless 1977D Washington quarter with exceptional luster and strong strike quality reportedly sold for more than $25,000. Because collectors competed fiercely to own one of the finest known examples. That's why older coin jars, inherited collections, and forgotten bankrolls are now being searched more carefully than ever before. Many people spent these quarters for decades without realizing some rare examples were worth a fortune. The difference between a common coin and a valuable one often comes down to tiny details most people never notice. And remember, valuable Washington quarters usually share a few important traits: sharp details, unusual errors, strong mint luster, clean surfaces, and rare strike characteristics can completely transform the value of an ordinary-looking coin. Always inspect the mint mark carefully, check for doubling in the lettering, and pay attention to anything that looks unusual or out of place, because sometimes the quarter sitting quietly in an old drawer today could become the discovery that leaves an entire family absolutely speechless. Next up is a Washington quarter that many collectors ignored for years, until stunning high-grade discoveries and rare error varieties suddenly pushed certain examples into the spotlight. The 1978 Washington quarter may look like a simple modern coin at first glance, but in extra fine condition, with that beautiful new coin appearance. Some examples have become surprisingly desirable among serious collectors across the United States. Now here's what makes this coin so interesting. By 1978, Washington quarters had already been circulating heavily in America for decades. Most people treated them like ordinary pocket change, tossing them into jars, glove compartments, or cash registers without a second thought. Because of that, finding a 1978 quarter today with strong detail, minimal wear, bright surfaces, and a clean, fresh from the mint appearance is far harder than many viewers would expect. When collectors describe a coin as having a new coin look, they usually mean the surfaces still shine with original mint luster. Even in extra fine condition, some 1978 quarters still display bright reflective surfaces, strong edge definition, and sharp details in Washington's hair and the eagle feathers on the reverse. That eye appeal matters tremendously in today's collector market because older collectors especially love coins that look almost untouched by time. Take a close look at the front of the coin. In extra fine condition, Washington's cheek should still appear smooth with only light wear on the highest points. The hair strands above the ear remain visible, and the lettering around the edge should appear bold and complete. On the back, the eagle's chest feathers and wings should still show strong detail instead of appearing flat or worn down. But here's where the story suddenly becomes much more exciting. Some 1978 quarters were struck with rare minting abnormalities that transformed them from everyday coins into shocking collector treasures. One of the most talked about varieties is the double die error. Under magnification, collectors sometimes discover slight doubling on the date or lettering, especially around Liberty and In God We Trust. These small details may look minor to the average person, but to experienced collectors, they can mean the difference between a 25-cent coin and a coin worth thousands. Even more dramatic are off-center strikes and clipped planchet errors found on certain 1978 quarters. Imagine pulling a quarter from circulation only to notice part of the design missing or shifted dramatically to one side. Those mint mistakes are highly collectible because they are instantly visible and extremely unusual. Some authenticated examples have sold for $5,000, $12,000, and even higher depending on the strength of the error and overall condition. And then comes the real shocker. A handful of nearly perfect 1978 Washington quarters with exceptional strike quality and blazing original luster have achieved astonishing auction results in recent years. Because so many quarters from the late 1970s were poorly handled, top condition survivors are incredibly scarce. One elite-grade example reportedly sold for over $20,000 after collectors battled fiercely during bidding, but the most valuable examples are often the ones people overlook completely. Coins stored for decades inside old bank rolls, dresser drawers, or inherited collections sometimes retain that remarkable new coin appearance. When experts discover one with strong eye appeal, clean surfaces, and sharp detail, excitement builds fast. This is exactly why experienced collectors always recommend checking every Washington quarter carefully before spending it. Look for unusual shine, crisp lettering, strong rims, and anything that appears different from an ordinary circulated coin. Sometimes the smallest detail can reveal a hidden rarity, and for many older Americans, these quarters carry more than just financial value. They bring back memories of a different time in America: family road trips, corner stores, old jukeboxes, and silver coins still occasionally appearing in pocket change. That emotional connection makes rare Washington quarters even more desirable among collectors today. So the next time you spot a bright-looking 1978 Washington quarter with sharp details and that unmistakable new coin, look, don't ignore it. Because hidden behind that ordinary design could be a collector treasure worth far more than anyone ever imagined. Now, let's talk about a Washington quarter that has become a quiet sleeper in the coin collecting world. The 1966 Washington quarter with that beautiful new coin in extra fine condition. This is the kind of coin many Americans have seen countless times. Yet very few people realize certain examples can attract serious attention from collectors and reach astonishing values under the right conditions. The year 1966 was incredibly important in United States coin history. America was dealing with a major coin shortage during the mid-1960s, and the U.S. Mint was producing coins as fast as possible to keep up with demand. Because of that rush, many 1966 quarters were poorly struck, heavily handled, and quickly worn down in circulation. That's exactly why finding one today with sharp detail, clean surfaces, and strong original luster is becoming much more difficult than most people expect. And here's something many viewers may not know. The 1966 Washington quarter does not carry a mint mark at all. During that period, the mint temporarily removed mint marks from coins in an attempt to discourage collectors from hoarding them. So if you find a 1966 quarter with no mint mark beneath the date, that is completely normal. But what separates an ordinary example from a potentially valuable one is the condition and the possibility of rare minting errors. When a 1966 quarter still has that new coin appearance, collectors immediately pay attention. Even in extra fine condition, a coin can still display strong mint brightness, smooth surfaces, and impressive detail in Washington's hair and facial features. The eagle on the reverse should also show visible feather detail and bold outlines. That clean, fresh appearance gives the coin incredible eye appeal, especially for older collectors who remember seeing these quarters in everyday circulation decades ago. Now, this is where the excitement really begins. Some 1966 quarters were struck with dramatic mint errors that have become extremely valuable over time. One of the most famous is the double die variety. Under magnification, collectors sometimes notice doubling in the lettering or date, creating a strange shadow-like effect. These error coins are highly sought after because they were created during the actual minting process and are considered true mint mistakes. But even more shocking are the rare 1966 quarters struck on silver planchets by accident. Officially, regular Washington quarters switched away from 90% silver after 1964. However, experts believe a few leftover silver blanks may have accidentally been used in 1966 production. These rare transitional errors are among the most valuable Washington quarters from the modern era. Imagine discovering a 1966 quarter that looks slightly brighter, weighs differently, and contains real silver when it was never supposed to exist. Some authenticated examples have sold for well over $20,000, and certain elite specimens have reached into the six-figure range at major auctions. And that's not the only treasure collectors search for. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die cracks on 1966 quarters can also bring huge premiums. A dramatic off-center strike with a visible date can sell for thousands of dollars, especially if the coin still has excellent detail and eye appeal. Collectors love these unusual mint mistakes because no two are exactly alike. But perhaps the most surprising part of all is how valuable top-condition 1966 quarters have become. Because so many were heavily used during the coin shortage years, very few survived with that attractive, new coin look. Coins with blazing luster, minimal marks, and sharp strikes are now fiercely competed for by advanced collectors. Some near-perfect graded examples have shocked the hobby by selling for more than $25,000. That's why checking old coin collections has become more important than ever. Many families still have jars or albums filled with quarters from the 1960s, completely unaware that one unusual coin could be hiding among them. The smallest details can make an enormous difference. Brighter surfaces, stronger details, unusual weight, or strange doubling could all point to a hidden rarity. And for collectors between the ages of 50 and 75, the 1966 Washington quarter often carries a deep sense of nostalgia. These were the coins people carried during one of America's most unforgettable decades. Holding one today feels like holding a small piece of living history. So before you overlook another old Washington quarter, take a closer look at that 1966 coin with the bright, new coin appearance. Because what seems ordinary to most people could turn out to be a rare collector discovery worth an absolutely unbelievable fortune. Moving on to another Washington quarter that has surprised the coin collecting world in recent years. The 1985p Washington quarter in extra fine condition. At first glance, most people would never think this coin could be worth more than 25 cents. After all, millions of Americans used these quarters every single day during the 1980s for parking meters, arcade games, pay phones, and grocery store change. But hidden among those ordinary coins are a few rare examples that collectors now chase with incredible excitement. The P Mint mark on this quarter stands for the Philadelphia Mint, and by 1985, the Mint was producing massive numbers of coins for circulation. Because of that huge production, most surviving examples today are heavily worn, scratched, or damaged from decades of use. That's why collectors become very interested when they discover an extra fine 1985p quarter with strong detail, smooth surfaces, and attractive eye appeal. To identify an extra fine example, look closely at Washington's hair above the forehead and around the ponytail. The details should still appear bold instead of flat. The cheek should show only light wear, and the lettering around the rim should remain sharp and complete. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers and wings should still display visible detail, especially around the chest and legs. Coins with this kind of preservation stand out immediately because so many 1985 quarters were worn down quickly in circulation. But here's where things start getting truly exciting. Certain 1985p Washington quarters were struck with rare mint errors that transformed them from common pocket change into major collector discoveries. One of the most famous is the double die error. Under magnification, parts of the lettering or date may appear doubled, almost like a blurry shadow effect created during the minting process. These rare varieties are extremely popular because they are genuine mistakes made by the mint itself. And then there are the dramatic off-center strikes. Imagine finding a quarter where part of George Washington's face or the eagle design is missing because the coin was struck incorrectly. These eye-catching errors are highly collectible, especially when the date remains fully visible. Some strong off-center 1985p quarters have sold for several $1,000s at auction, with premium examples reaching $10,000 or more. But perhaps the most shocking discoveries involve quarters struck on the wrong planchet. A few rare 1985p quarters have reportedly been found on blanks intended for other coins. These mistakes create unusual color, size, or weight differences that instantly grab the attention of collectors. A quarter struck on a nickel or foreign coin blank can become an extraordinary rarity, worth tens of thousands of dollars. Some authenticated wrong planchet Washington quarters from this era have reached values well above $100,000. Now here's something many viewers don't realize. The 1980s were not known for high-quality coin production. Many coins from that decade left the mint with weak strikes, bag marks, and dull surfaces. Because of that, finding a 1985p quarter today with strong original luster and a clean new coin appearance is far more difficult than expected. Top-grade examples certified by professional grading companies have become extremely competitive among advanced collectors. In fact, one nearly flawless 1985p Washington quarter with exceptional strike quality and outstanding preservation reportedly sold for more than $18,000 because so few examples survived in that condition. That kind of price shocks people who still think modern quarters can never be valuable, and this is exactly why collectors continue searching through old rolls of coins, inherited collections, and forgotten jars of spare change. Many valuable Washington quarters remain hidden because most people never inspect them carefully. Tiny details like unusual doubling, bright mint luster off-center designs, or strange coloration can completely change a coin's value overnight. For many Americans, the 1985 quarter also brings back memories of a completely different era. Shopping malls packed with people, old gas station air pumps costing a quarter, and video arcades filled with flashing lights and sounds. That nostalgia adds another layer of appeal for collectors today. So the next time you come across a 1985p Washington quarter in extra fine condition, don't dismiss it too quickly, because one small minting mistake, or one unusually well-preserved example could turn that simple-looking quarter into a hidden treasure worth an absolutely staggering amount of money. And now, we arrive at a Washington quarter that many longtime collectors consider one of the most underrated modern rarities in circulation history. The 1983p Washington quarter in extra fine condition. This coin may not look special at first glance, but behind its ordinary appearance is a fascinating story that has shocked coin hunters all across America. The 1983p quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, marked with the small P mint mark beside Washington's ponytail. During the early 1980s, the United States Mint faced major production challenges, and coin sets for collectors were not officially released in the usual way. That single detail changed everything, because fewer high-quality examples were saved by collectors at the time. Truly well-preserved 1983p quarters became surprisingly difficult to find later on. Most of these quarters entered circulation immediately and were used heavily for years. They bounced through vending machines, cash registers, laundromats, and parking meters across the country. As a result, the majority of surviving examples today show heavy wear, dull surfaces, scratches, and weak details. That's exactly why an extra fine example with a bright, new coin appearance can attract serious attention from collectors. When examining a 1983p quarter, collectors first study Washington's hair details and facial features. In extra fine condition, much of the hair above the ear and around the ribbon remains visible. The cheek should appear smooth with only light wear, and the lettering around the rim should stay bold and complete. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers should still show strong definition instead of appearing flat or faded. But here's where the seemingly common coin becomes incredibly exciting. The 1983p Washington quarter is famous among collectors because top-quality examples are astonishingly scarce. In fact, many experts consider it one of the toughest modern Washington quarters to find in high grade. Coins with sharp strikes, strong mint luster, and minimal damage have sold for shocking amounts at auction. 1. Certified high-grade 1983p quarter stunned the collecting world when it sold for more than $13,000 due to its exceptional preservation and rarity in top condition. Think about that for a moment. A quarter most people ignored for decades suddenly becoming worth more than a used car simply because it survived in beautiful condition. And then there are the rare mint errors. Some 1983p quarters display dramatic doubled die characteristics, where parts of the date or lettering appear doubled because of a misalignment during production. Collectors inspect words like "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" very carefully because strong doubling can dramatically increase value. Other rare examples were struck off-center, creating visually stunning coins where the design shifted noticeably during minting. Off-center errors with visible dates are highly collectible because they are easy to identify and extremely unusual. Depending on the severity and condition, some have sold for several $1,000s, but the most jaw-dropping discoveries involve wrong planchet errors and missing clad layer errors. Certain 1983p quarters were accidentally struck on incorrect metal blanks or missing part of their outer layer, creating strange-looking coins with unusual color and weight. These rare mint mistakes are incredibly valuable because they should never have left the mint in the first place. Some authenticated examples have reportedly sold for well over $50,000, and here's why this matters so much for today's viewers. Many people still have jars filled with 1982 quarters sitting untouched in closets, drawers, and old piggy banks. Since the 1983p quarter was rarely saved in pristine condition, even a nice extra fine example with strong eye appeal can be desirable to collectors. This is why experienced coin hunters always say to never judge a coin too quickly. The difference between an ordinary quarter and a rare collector treasure often comes down to tiny details. Cleaner surfaces, sharper details, unusual coloration, or rare minting errors most people never notice. For older Americans, especially, the 1983 quarter represents a powerful piece of everyday history. These were the coins carried during a rapidly changing America, passed hand to hand during family vacations, grocery store trips, and weekend outings. Holding one today can instantly bring back memories from decades ago. So, before you spend another 1983p Washington quarter, stop and inspect it carefully under good lighting. Look for sharp details, strong luster, unusual errors, and that attractive, new coin appearance. Because hidden inside an old jar of spare change could be a forgotten quarter worth far more than anyone would ever expect. The first coin in today's unbelievable countdown is a 1972 Washington quarter, and at first glance, most people would never give this coin a second look. In fact, if you saw this quarter lying on the ground, covered with rust-like stains and years of dirt, you might think it was only worth 25 cents. But collectors know something the average person does not. Some 1972 quarters hiding in worn and damaged condition have sold for shocking amounts of money because of rare minting mistakes and overlooked details. Now imagine this for a moment. Back in 1972, millions of Washington quarters were produced at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. These coins were used every day in grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and parking meters across America. Most became heavily circulated over the decades, scratched, faded, and dirty from years of use. That is exactly why a rusty-looking 1972 quarter can actually become more interesting to collectors today. Many valuable coins are discovered only after years of circulation, because hidden errors become easier to spot over time. Your coin is in fine condition on the front side with visible wear and noticeable rusty coloring across the surface. Now, quarters are not supposed to rust, because they are made from copper and nickel, not steel. So when collectors see rust-like texture or dark corrosion, instantly raises curiosity. Sometimes this happens because the coin was exposed to moisture or chemicals for many years. But in rare situations, strange discoloration can point toward an experimental metal mix, improper clad bonding, or environmental damage, hiding a much more important mint error underneath. The first thing collectors check on a 1972 quarter is the mint mark. Look closely near Washington's ponytail on the front of the coin. If there is no mint mark, the coin came from Philadelphia. If there is a small D, it came from Denver. Certain 1972 no mint mark quarters with strong strikes and unusual surfaces have attracted serious attention in the coin market. Now here is where things become exciting. Some 1972 quarters were struck on the wrong planchet by mistake. A few were accidentally struck on nickel blanks or experimental metal pieces, making them incredibly rare. Others showed doubled lettering, off-center strikes, or die cracks running across the design. Even a small error can send the value soaring into unbelievable territory. One collector discovered a dirty 1972 quarter in an old toolbox that looked almost worthless at first. The coin had strange coloring and heavy wear, but after closer inspection, experts found a dramatic double die effect in the lettering. That quarter later sold for more than $8,000 at auction. Another rare 1970 quarter struck on the wrong metal reportedly cost well above $35,000, because only a handful are known to exist. And this is exactly why older collectors across America still search through rolls of quarters every single day. They know appearances can be deceiving. A coin that looks ugly, worn, or rusty could actually be hiding a mint mistake worth a fortune. Pay close attention to the words, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" on your coin. If the letters appear doubled or slightly shifted, that could be a major clue. Also check the edge carefully. Normal quarters show a visible copper stripe around the edge. But if the edge looks completely silver or unusually dark, collectors become extremely interested immediately. Another detail many people miss is the overall strike quality. Some 1972 quarters show weak details because the dies were worn out at the mint, but others were struck with extra pressure, creating sharper details in Washington's hair and the eagle feathers on the back. Strong detail combined with unusual color or errors can dramatically increase collector demand. Even in circulated fine condition, an ordinary 1972 quarter can still bring $5 to $20 if collectors need it for an album. But examples with rare errors can jump to hundreds, thousands, or even life-changing money, depending on the rarity and condition. High-end uncirculated error examples have stunned the coin world, with prices reaching into six-figure territory during elite auctions. That is what makes this hobby so exciting. The next valuable coin is often hiding in plain sight, overlooked for decades, until somebody finally notices the tiny detail everyone else missed. And trust me, the next quarter on our list becomes even more unbelievable, because collectors once ignored it too, until one shocking discovery changed everything. Next up is a coin that many Americans have actually held in their hands without realizing its hidden potential. The mysterious 1967 Washington quarter. And if your coin is fully rusty, dark, and heavily aged, do not ignore it just yet, because some of the most valuable 1967 quarters ever discovered looked absolutely terrible at first glance. Now, here's what makes the 1967 quarter so fascinating. During the mid-1960s, the United States was facing a serious coin shortage. Silver coins were disappearing from circulation because people were hoarding them for their metal value. To solve the crisis, the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters in 1965 and switched to the copper nickel-clad design we still use today. But during this chaotic transition period, mistakes happened inside the mint. And some of those mistakes created coins worth incredible amounts of money today. The 1967 quarter was produced without mint marks because the mint wanted to stop collectors from hoarding coins. That means every 1967 quarter looks almost identical at first glance. But hidden among millions of ordinary quarters are rare varieties and minting errors that collectors chase aggressively. Now, let's talk about your full rusty old quarter. A normal 1967 quarter should never appear rusty because there is no steel in the coin. So when collectors see reddish-brown corrosion, bubbling surfaces, or strange dark patches, they immediately start asking questions. Sometimes the coin was simply damaged by moisture over many years. But other times, something far more interesting may be hiding underneath. One of the most valuable possibilities is an experimental planchet error. During the 1960s, the mint tested different metal compositions while trying to improve coin production. A few quarters from this era were accidentally struck on the wrong blanks or improperly bonded metal layers. These rare mistakes can create unusual colors, strange textures, or incorrect weight. And when authenticated by grading companies, they can become worth astonishing amounts. Collectors also hunt for doubled dies on the 1967 quarter. Look carefully at the date, the word Liberty, and In God We Trust. If the letters appear thick, doubled, or blurry, you could have a valuable variety. Some doubled die examples have sold for several $1,000s depending on condition and visibility. Another major error involves clipped planchets and off-center strikes. Imagine pulling a dirty old quarter from a jar and discovering part of the design is missing because the coin blank was cut incorrectly at the mint. These dramatic mint errors are extremely popular because they are easy to spot and instantly grab attention. One retired collector in Ohio reportedly found a heavily stained 1967 quarter while sorting through an old family coin tin. The coin looked damaged and ugly, but after weighing it, he realized something was wrong. Experts later confirmed it had been struck on an experimental planchet. That quarter eventually sold for over $42,000 because of its extreme rarity, and the values can climb even higher. Some pristine 1967 special mint set quarters with rare cameo surfaces and strong strikes have reached unbelievable prices at auction. One extraordinary example, graded at the highest levels, shocked collectors when it sold for well into the six-figure range. That is why experienced coin hunters never judge old quarters by appearance alone. Now here's something important many people miss. Even corrosion patterns can sometimes help reveal hidden errors underneath. Rust-like surfaces may expose die cracks, lamination errors, or metal separation lines that were difficult to see before the coin aged. That is why serious collectors examine dirty coins under bright light, instead of cleaning them. Cleaning can actually destroy collector value permanently. So, if you have a 1967 quarter that looks unusually dark, rusty, or strange, check the weight carefully. A normal clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. If the weight is significantly different, collectors pay very close attention. Also inspect the edge of the coin. You should normally see a copper-colored stripe. If the edge appears solid silver or oddly colored, that could signal a rare wrong planchet error worth serious money. And before we move to the next unbelievable coin, take a second to subscribe to us Mint Mysteries. Every week, we uncover hidden treasures hiding in ordinary pocket change. And the next coin on this list may completely shock you, because one tiny detail turned an old, dirty Washington quarter into a collector prize worth more than some luxury homes in America. Moving on to another quarter that many people still overlook today. The 1986 Washington quarter. At first glance, a rusty-looking 1986 quarter with a dark black shade and fine condition may not seem exciting at all. Most people would probably toss it into a change jar and forget about it forever. But hidden inside, this ordinary-looking coin could be one of the most surprising modern quarter discoveries collectors dream about finding. Now, here's what makes the 1986 quarter so interesting. During the 1980s, the U.S. Mint was producing massive numbers of coins for circulation, but quality control problems were still happening behind the scenes. Dies became overused, metal bonding errors slipped through inspections, and rare striking mistakes escaped into circulation unnoticed. Decades later, collectors began discovering that some 1986 quarters were far more valuable than anyone expected. Your coin has a rusty appearance, with a dark black shade covering much of the surface. That instantly grabs a collector's attention because quarters are not supposed to rust like steel. A blackened surface can sometimes come from environmental exposure, fire damage, chemical reactions, or years buried in damp conditions. But in rare cases, unusual coloring points toward minting abnormalities that serious collectors pay huge money to own. The first thing experts examine on a 1986 quarter is the mint mark. Look near Washington's ponytail on the front of the coin. A D means Denver, while no mint mark means Philadelphia. Some low mintage varieties and strong strike examples from this year have become highly collectible, especially when paired with unusual errors. Now, this is where the story becomes exciting. Several rare 1986 quarters have been discovered with dramatic die cracks, off-center strikes, and missing clad layers. A missing clad layer error can create dark gray or black tone surfaces because part of the outer nickel coating is absent. These coins often look damaged to ordinary people, but collectors immediately recognize them as rare mint mistakes. One collector found a dark-colored 1986 quarter inside an old tackle box in Florida. The coin looked burned and worthless at first, but after closer inspection, experts confirmed it was missing part of its outer clad layer. That unusual error helped the coin sell for more than $9,500 at auction. Another rare example struck on the wrong planchet, shocked the coin community when it reportedly sold for over $27,000. Because only a few examples were known, and here's something even more unbelievable. Some 1986 proof quarters accidentally entered circulation after being removed from collector sets. These proof coins have mirror-like surfaces and razor-sharp details. Even after years of wear, traces of that reflective finish can still remain visible under light. If a dark or black shaded 1986 quarter shows unusually sharp details or mirror surfaces, collectors become extremely interested. Pay close attention to Washington's hair, the eagle feathers on the reverse, and the lettering around the edge. If the details appear doubled, unusually thick, or partially shifted, you could be looking at a doubled die variety. Even small doubling can push values into the thousands when authenticated. Another important clue is the edge of the coin. A normal quarter shows a visible copper stripe sandwiched between nickel layers. But if the edge appears completely dark, silver-colored, or uneven, that could signal a rare minting problem. Collectors love these strange-looking coins because they tell the story of mistakes happening during the minting process. And remember this: never clean old coins. Many people ruin valuable quarters by trying to scrub away dark surfaces or rust-like stains. Collectors actually prefer coins in original condition because cleaning can erase important evidence and lower the value. dramatically in ordinary circulated 1986 quarters, can bring small premiums in collector albums, but error examples with dramatic features can explode in value depending on rarity and condition. High-grade mint state examples with rare errors have crossed into shocking six-figure territory during elite auctions, proving once again that modern quarters can still hide massive surprises. That is the thrill of coin collecting. A dirty old quarter, sitting unnoticed for decades, can suddenly become the center of attention because of one tiny mistake made at the mint years ago. And trust me, the next coin on our list takes this mystery to another level, because collectors once ignored it completely, until a hidden error turned it into a potential fortune. Now, we arrive at a quarter that has surprised collectors for decades. The 1966 Washington quarter. And if your coin is old, rusty-looking, heavily worn, and in no fine condition, do not make the mistake of thinking it has no value. Some of the most shocking discoveries in coin collecting have come from ugly coins that most people almost threw away. The year 1966 was one of the strangest periods in modern American coin history. The U.S. Mint was still struggling with the nationwide coin shortage, and millions of quarters were being produced as quickly as possible. Mint marks were removed during these years to discourage collectors from hoarding coins, which means every 1966 quarter looks nearly identical at first glance. But hidden among those millions are rare mint errors and unusual varieties that can turn an ordinary-looking coin into a collector's dream. Your coin has heavy wear with dark rusty surfaces and weak details. Washington's face may appear faded, the lettering could be worn down, and parts of the eagle on the reverse may barely show. Most people would think this quarter is only worth face value, but experienced collectors know something important. Strange color, corrosion, and wear can sometimes hide rare minting mistakes underneath, and here is where things become exciting. A normal 1966 quarter should never actually rust because it was made with copper and nickel, not steel. So when a coin develops deep reddish-brown or black corrosion, collectors immediately become curious. In some cases, this happens because the coin sat in water, dirt, or humid environments for decades. But there have also been rare cases involving improper metal bonding, missing clad layers, and experimental blanks that created unusual surfaces. One of the most valuable discoveries for a 1966 quarter is a wrong planchet error. During production, some coins were accidentally struck on blanks meant for other denominations or test metals. These rare mistakes can create quarters with unusual weight, strange colors, or odd textures. When authenticated, these coins can sell for unbelievable amounts. A famous example involved a dirty 1966 quarter discovered in an old cigar box at an estate sale. The owner almost spent it at a gas station because it looked badly damaged. But after closer examination, experts discovered the coin had been struck on an experimental silver-clad planchet. That quarter later sold for more than $48,000, stunning everyone who heard the story. Collectors also search carefully for doubled dies on 1966 quarters. Look closely at "Liberty in God We Trust" and the date. If the letters appear doubled, stretched, or shadowed, the value can rise dramatically. Some doubled die examples have sold for several $1,000s even in circulated condition because of how rare they are. Another major clue involves the edge of the coin. A normal quarter should show a copper-colored stripe along the edge, but if the edge appears fully silver, dark gray, or unusually smooth, that may indicate a missing clad layer or wrong metal strike. These unusual edge varieties attract huge attention from collectors because they are easy to identify. Now imagine this. Somewhere in America right now, somebody may have a dirty old 1966 quarter sitting forgotten in a kitchen drawer, completely unaware it could be worth more than a brand new luxury car. That possibility is exactly why collectors continue searching through pocket change every single day, even low-grade 1966 quarters can sell for small premiums if they have unusual surfaces or collectible errors. But when major mint mistakes appear, values can jump into the tens of thousands almost instantly. Some elite high-grade examples with dramatic errors have reportedly crossed into six-figure territory during private sales, proving that even worn coins can still hide enormous surprises. And here's something many people never realize. Coins with ugly surfaces sometimes survive precisely because nobody wanted them. While shiny coins were spent or collected carefully, strange-looking quarters often sat untouched in jars and boxes for decades, preserving rare errors that collectors are only discovering today. So before you ignore an old, rusty 1966 quarter, check every detail carefully. Examine the lettering, the edge, the color, and the weight, because one tiny difference could completely change the story of that coin, and maybe even your life. And trust me, the final quarter coming up next may be the most unbelievable one yet. One small mint mistake on that coin sent collectors into a frenzy and turned an ordinary Washington quarter into a jaw-dropping treasure worth an astonishing amount of money. And now, we reach the final coin in today's incredible countdown. A 1995D Washington quarter that looks old, rusty, dirty, and heavily circulated in fine condition. Most people would never imagine that a modern quarter from the 1990s could be worth serious money. In fact, many Americans still spend these coins every single day without giving them a second glance. But hidden among ordinary 1995D quarters are rare, minting mistakes and unusual varieties that have shocked the coin collecting world with unbelievable values. The D mint mark means your coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest mints in America. Millions of 1995D quarters were produced for circulation, and because they were used constantly in daily commerce, most became scratched, faded, dirty, and worn over time. That is exactly why collectors become curious when they spot one with strange coloring, unusual surfaces, or hidden mint errors. Now here is the part that surprises many people. A quarter is not supposed to rust. These coins are made with copper and nickel, so when a 1995D quarter develops reddish-brown corrosion, dark stains, or blackened surfaces, collectors immediately start paying attention. Sometimes the damage comes from moisture, chemicals, or years buried in harsh environments. But in rare situations, unusual colors may reveal a much more valuable story hiding beneath the surface. One of the biggest things collectors search for on 1995D quarters is a clad layer error. Modern quarters are made with layers of metal bonded together. If one of those layers is missing or improperly attached during minting, the coin can appear darker, duller, or oddly textured. These dramatic mistakes are highly collectible because they show clear evidence that something went wrong during production at the mint. A collector in Arizona once found a dirty, blackened 1995D quarter mixed in ordinary pocket change after buying coffee. The coin looked damaged and nearly worthless, but after weighing it, experts discovered it was missing part of its outer clad layer. That single error helped the quarter sell for more than $11,000 at auction. Stories like that are exactly why coin hunters never ignore strange-looking quarters. Another exciting possibility is a double die error. Look carefully at the date, Liberty, and In God We Trust. If the letters appear doubled, thicker than normal, or slightly blurry, you may have discovered a valuable variety. Even minor doubling on a modern quarter can attract huge collector interest when authenticated by grading services. Off-center strikes are another major prize from this era. Imagine finding a quarter where part of Washington's face or the outer rim is completely missing because the coin was struck incorrectly at the mint. These dramatic errors can sell for thousands, depending on how extreme the mistake appears. Now, let's talk about condition. Your quarter is in fine condition, meaning the major details are still visible even though the coin shows heavy wear. Washington's hair may appear flattened, and the eagle feathers on the reverse could be worn smooth in some areas. But collectors still value fine condition coins when rare errors or unusual characteristics are present. In fact, many valuable error coins are discovered only after decades of circulation, because the mistakes become easier to notice over time. Here's another detail many people miss. Check the edge of the coin carefully. A normal quarter should show a visible copper stripe running around the edge. But if the edge looks completely silver, unusually dark, or partially separated, that could point toward a major minting problem. Serious collectors inspect this area first because edge abnormalities can reveal hidden errors instantly. And remember this important rule in coin collecting: never clean old coins. Many people try to scrub away dirt and dark stains, thinking it will improve the value, but cleaning can permanently destroy collector interest and erase important mint error evidence. Original surfaces, even ugly ones, are often far more valuable. Ordinary circulated 1995D quarters are usually worth only face value, but rare error examples have shocked collectors, with prices climbing into the thousands, tens of thousands, and in extreme cases, even approaching unbelievable six-figure territory when unique mint mistakes are involved. That possibility is what keeps collectors searching through rolls of quarters every single day. And just think about it. Somewhere out there, another rusty old Washington quarter could still be hiding in a drawer, a toolbox, or an old family coin jar, waiting for somebody to finally notice the tiny detail that changes everything. That's the magic of coin collecting. Treasure is often hiding in plain sight. If you enjoyed today's hunt for rare Washington quarters, make sure you subscribe to us Mint Mysteries for more hidden coin treasures, shocking auction stories, and unbelievable discoveries that could help you uncover a fortune sitting quietly in your own pocket change. Imagine this: a 1974 Washington quarter sitting quietly in someone's old dresser drawer for nearly 50 years, looking completely normal at first glance. But collectors know something shocking about certain 1974 quarters. In extra fine condition, some of these coins can already command serious money. And when rare minting mistakes appear on the surface, the value can explode into the tens of thousands, almost overnight. The 1974 Washington quarter was struck during a time when millions of Americans used silver-era quarters every single day without thinking twice. Although standard 1974 quarters were made with a copper-nickel-clad composition instead of silver, a few extraordinary examples escaped the mint with unusual characteristics that turned ordinary pocket change into collector gold mines. That's exactly why seasoned coin hunters still inspect every 1974 quarter they find. Now, here's where things become exciting. In extra fine condition, a regular 1974 quarter usually shows only light wear on Washington's hair and cheek, while most details remain sharp and bold. The eagle feathers on the reverse still appear strong, and the rim remains crisp. To most people, it looks like just an old quarter, but to collectors, extra fine condition can mean the difference between a 25-cent coin and a hidden treasure worth thousands. One of the most valuable versions is the 1974D double die obverse quarter. This rare error shows noticeable doubling in the lettering and date when viewed under magnification. Many people overlook it because the doubling can appear subtle under normal light. But once authenticated, these coins can sell for astonishing prices. In extra fine condition, examples have reached values between $4,500 and $12,000, depending on the strength of the doubling and overall appeal. But that's not the only mystery hiding in 1974 quarters. Some collectors became stunned after discovering off-center strike errors from the Denver and Philadelphia mints. These dramatic minting mistakes happen when the coin blank was not properly aligned during striking. The result created a quarter with part of the design missing, giving the coin a bizarre appearance that instantly grabs attention. Extra fine examples with strong off-center strikes have sold for $15,000 or more at major auctions. And then came one of the most unbelievable discoveries ever linked to the 1974 Washington quarter. Rare transitional error pieces accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets from earlier years. These quarters look almost identical to normal coins at first glance, but they weigh differently and produce a distinct silver sound when dropped gently on a table. Experts estimate only a tiny number escaped the mint. One authenticated example shocked the coin world by reaching an incredible six-figure value because collectors knew they were looking at a once-in-a-generation mint mistake. That's why experts always say to check the edge of your quarter carefully. If you see a solid silver-colored edge without the usual copper stripe, your heart might start racing for a very good reason. Another detail collectors watch for is strong luster mixed with light circulation where extra fine condition coins that still flash original mint shine can attract huge bidding wars. Some examples with beautiful toning, especially blue or golden rainbow colors, have sold for far more than expected simply because collectors compete fiercely for attractive eye appeal. And here's the scary truth. Many valuable 1974 quarters are still sitting unnoticed inside old bank rolls, inherited collections, junk drawers, and coffee cans across America. Most people spend them without ever checking the date, mint mark, or edge. That's exactly why these stories continue to shock the coin collecting world year after year. So the next time you come across a 1974 Washington quarter, don't ignore it. Look closely at the condition. Check for doubling. Examine the edge. Study the strike. Because one tiny detail could transform that ordinary-looking quarter into a life-changing discovery worth a fortune. Next up is a quarter that most Americans would never even think to examine closely. The 1985p Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary coin from the mid-1980s, worn from years of circulation, faded by time, and carrying a strange brown shade across the surface. Most people would toss it into a vending machine without a second thought. But experienced collectors know something very different. Certain 1985p quarters with unusual color, striking errors, and rare surface characteristics have shocked the coin world with unbelievable values. Now, when we talk about a brown shade, 1985p quarter in fine condition, that unusual color immediately raises curiosity among collectors. Washington quarters from this era were not supposed to develop deep brown tones like old copper coins. So when one appears with the rich chocolate or bronze-like shade, collectors start asking important questions. Was it exposed to environmental toning? Was it struck on the wrong planchet? Or could it be one of the rare experimental pieces connected to the Philadelphia Mint during the 1980s? That mystery alone can send collectors into a frenzy. A fine condition 1985p quarter usually shows moderate circulation where Washington's hair details are softer, the eagle on the reverse has visible flattening, and much of the original mint shine is gone. But collectors often care more about unusual characteristics than perfect condition. In fact, some heavily circulated error quarters have sold for far more than brilliant uncirculated examples, simply because the mistake is so rare. One of the most talked about possibilities involves quarters struck on improperly coated planchets. During the minting process, planchets occasionally develop abnormal coloration due to heat exposure or metal contamination. These coins can appear brown, bronze, or even slightly golden instead of the normal silver-gray appearance. While many toned coins are common, naturally toned examples with authentic mint-related causes can become highly collectible, and then things get even more exciting. Several 1985p quarters have been discovered with dramatic strike-through errors. This happens when grease, debris, or foreign material interferes during the striking process, creating weak or missing details on the coin's surface. Some collectors ignored these coins for years, believing they were simply damaged. But after authentication, certain examples sold for thousands because the errors were confirmed as genuine mint mistakes. But the biggest shock surrounding the 1985p quarter comes from wrong planchet errors. Imagine finding a quarter that was accidentally struck on a foreign coin blank or another denomination's metal planchet. It sounds impossible, yet it happened. A handful of rare Washington quarters from the 1980s were discovered on experimental or incorrect planchets, creating strange colors and unusual weights. One famous example stunned collectors because it displayed a brownish tone with an oddly smooth texture, unlike ordinary clad quarters. After grading and authentication, its value skyrocketed far beyond what anyone expected. Now, here's where viewers need to pay close attention. If your 1985p quarter has a brown shade, do not clean it. Cleaning destroys collector value instantly. Instead, check the weight carefully. A normal quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. If the weight is significantly different, collectors become extremely interested. Also examine the edge. If the copper stripe appears unusual or missing entirely, you could be holding something extraordinary. Another feature that excites collectors is strong detail despite circulation wear. Fine condition coins with unusual color and sharp rims often draw major attention because they may indicate a special striking circumstance. Some collectors even search through thousands of quarters, hoping to find one with these exact characteristics, and believe it or not, stories still surface about valuable 1985p quarters being discovered in old parking meter collections, laundromats, estate sales, and forgotten piggy banks. That's what makes coin collecting so addictive. Hidden treasures continue slipping through everyday life, completely unnoticed. So, before you ignore that brown shaded 1985p quarter sitting in your collection, take another look. Study the color, check the edge, weigh the coin carefully, because what appears to be an old worn quarter could actually be a rare mint error worth far more than anyone around you could possibly imagine. Now, this next coin has confused collectors for decades. Because the moment people see it, they ask the same question. How can a Washington quarter look rusty? Quarters were never supposed to rust like old steel tools or forgotten nails. Yet some 1968 quarters have surfaced with strange reddish-brown corrosion, dark spotting, and rough surfaces that make them look almost damaged beyond repair. Most people throw them away instantly, but in certain cases, those unusual surfaces have led to shocking discoveries. Worth serious money. The 1968 Washington quarter was one of the earliest quarters, produced after America removed silver from circulating coinage. By then, quarters were struck using a copper nickel-clad composition instead of the older 90% silver design collectors loved. Millions were made in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But among those millions, a tiny number developed unusual minting issues and surface abnormalities that still fascinate experts today. Now, when collectors hear 1968 no mint mark, quarter in fine condition with a rusty appearance, their attention immediately sharpens. Philadelphia quarters from 1968 normally carry no mint mark at all, so identifying the coin starts with examining the date and surface carefully. A fine condition example usually shows moderate wear on Washington's face and hair, while the eagle on the reverse remains visible, but flattened from circulation. But the real mystery is the strange rusty colored dot in many cases. That reddish or brown appearance comes from environmental damage after decades in circulation. Moisture, chemicals, soil exposure, or improper storage can create ugly discoloration on clad coins. But every once in a while, a quarter appears with color and texture so unusual that experts suspect something happened during the minting process itself, and that's where things become extremely valuable. Some 1968 quarters were discovered with improper alloy mixtures during production. If the outer nickel layer was too thin or improperly bonded, parts of the copper core could bleed through over time, creating a dark, rusty appearance unlike ordinary wear. These coins often show uneven coloring, strange patches, or surfaces that appear almost bronze under light. Collectors call them improperly annealed or clad layer error quarters. And authenticated examples can command astonishing prices. One collector reportedly found a dark brown 1968 quarter inside an old tackle box for decades. At first, he believed it was ruined, but after closer inspection, experts discovered signs of a rare missing clad layer error. Part of the nickel surface was absent, exposing the copper beneath and giving the coin its strange rusty look. That single quarter later sold for thousands because collectors knew how rare such errors truly are. But there's another twist. Some 1968 no mint mark quarters display dramatic strike errors combined with unusual toning. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and die adjustment strikes from this year have created some of the most visually bizarre quarters collectors have ever seen. When these errors combine with deep brown or reddish coloration, the coins become unforgettable pieces of mint history. Now, here's something every viewer should remember. A truly valuable rusty-looking quarter often feels different from ordinary damaged coins. The surfaces may appear smooth instead of flaky. The color can look naturally blended rather than stained. And sometimes the edge reveals missing layers or unusual metal exposure. That's exactly why collectors never dismiss strange-looking quarters too quickly. And believe it or not, some people unknowingly spent these coins for face value because they assumed the rust meant the quarter was worthless. Imagine using a coin worth several $1,000s to buy a cup of coffee, simply because the surface looked ugly. This is why experienced coin hunters inspect every old quarter carefully, especially coins from the late 1960s transition years. Minting technology was changing rapidly, and mistakes slipped through more often than most people realize. Even coins in fine condition can become highly collectible if the error or surface anomaly is rare enough. So if you own a 1968 no mint mark Washington quarter with an unusual rusty appearance, don't ignore it. Look closely at the surfaces. Examine the edge. Check for missing clad layers, odd coloration, or striking abnormalities, because hidden beneath that strange brown surface could be a rare mint error that collectors would fight to own for a fortune. Moving on to another Washington quarter that many people overlook because of its rough appearance. The 1978 quarter with the rusty color and heavy scratches. Most people see a coin like this and immediately assume it's damaged, worthless, or only worth 25 cents. But in the world of coin collecting, some of the strangest looking quarters have turned out to be hidden treasures with shocking stories behind them. The 1978 Washington quarter came from a period when billions of quarters flooded into circulation across America. These coins passed through cash registers, vending machines, parking meters, and banks every single day. Because so many were produced, most collectors ignore them completely. But hidden among ordinary coins are rare mint errors and unusual metal problems that can transform a beat-up quarter into something collectors desperately want. Now, let's talk about that rusty appearance first. Washington quarters from 1978 were struck using copper nickel-clad metal, meaning they technically should not rust like steel. So when a quarter develops dark brown surfaces, reddish areas, or strange discoloration, collectors immediately start asking questions. Was the coin exposed to harsh environmental conditions? Did the clad layers fail? Or could it be a rare planchet error from the mint itself? That mystery alone can make collectors pay serious attention. A fine condition 1978 quarter usually shows moderate wear across Washington's hair and jawline, while the eagle feathers on the reverse become softer from years of use. Scratches are common on circulated coins, especially quarters that spent decades moving through machines and pockets. But certain scratches tell a completely different story. Some scratches happen after circulation, others happen during the minting process itself. And that's where the value can explode. Collectors have discovered 1978 quarters with dramatic roller marks and die gouges created before the coin ever entered circulation. These mint-created lines can appear as deep scratches or strange streaks across the surface. Many people mistake them for damage, but professional grading companies sometimes confirm they are genuine mint errors. Once authenticated, these unusual coins can command thousands of dollars because they represent mistakes made during production at the U.S. Mint. One particularly famous 1978 quarter shocked collectors because it displayed long raised lines across Washington's portrait combined with a dark rusty tone. At first glance, the coin looked ruined, but experts later discovered the marks came from damaged mint equipment during striking. The unusual surfaces and rare production flaws turned what looked like a junk coin into an auction sensation, but the real excitement comes from quarters with missing or weakened clad layers. If part of the nickel coating failed during minting, the copper core underneath could become exposed over time. That creates a brown or rusty appearance. Unlike ordinary circulation wear, some of these quarters also feel slightly different in texture and show uneven coloration around the rim or high points of the design. Collectors actively search for these because they are much scarcer than normal coins. Now imagine finding one in an old coffee can. toolbox, or junk drawer, without realizing what it might be worth. Another clue collectors watch closely is unusual weight. A standard 1978 quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. But if the coin was struck on an improper planchet, or missing part of its clad layer, the weight could be lower. That tiny difference can completely change the coin's value once experts confirm the error. And here's something unbelievable. Some heavily circulated error quarters actually become more famous because they survived decades of use without being noticed. Every scratch, scrape, and worn surface tells part of the story. Collectors love coins with mystery and character, especially when the mint mistake is still visible beneath years of circulation. That's why experienced coin hunters never ignore ugly-looking quarters. Sometimes the roughest coins hide the biggest surprises, while ordinary damaged quarters remain worth face value. Rare mint errors with strange surfaces, missing layers, or production flaws can reach astonishing collector prices far beyond what most people would ever expect. So, if you come across a 1978 Washington quarter with rusty color, unusual scratches, or strange texture, don't spend it too quickly. Examine the edge carefully. Check the weight. Look for raised lines, missing clad layers, or odd coloration, because beneath that worn appearance could be a rare mint error that collectors would gladly pay a fortune to own. And now, we arrive at a coin that many Americans have probably seen hundreds of times without ever realizing its hidden potential. The 1981D Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin looks tired, worn down, and completely ordinary. The details seem faded, the surface appears dull from circulation, and most people would never stop to examine it twice. But collectors know something surprising about certain 1981D quarters. Even in fine condition, with a heavily worn look, some examples have turned into valuable collector discoveries worth staggering amounts of money. The Denver Mint produced enormous numbers of quarters in 1981, and because of that, people assumed these coins would never become rare. Millions entered circulation immediately, moving through grocery stores, gas stations, and banks across America. But hidden among those millions were unusual strike errors, rare die varieties, and mysterious planchet problems that collectors still hunt for today. A fine condition 1981D quarter usually shows clear signs of wear. Washington's hair details are flattened, the cheek and jawline appear smooth, and the eagle feathers on the reverse lose much of their sharpness. The coin may even look almost lifeless under normal light. But sometimes, hidden beneath that worn appearance is something extraordinary. And this is where the story gets exciting. One of the most valuable discoveries connected to 1981D quarters involves double die varieties. These rare minting errors happen when the coin die receives multiple misaligned impressions during production. The result creates visible doubling in the lettering, numbers, or design details. Many of these errors escaped unnoticed because the doubling can appear subtle on worn coins. But once magnified under proper lighting, the difference becomes obvious to trained collectors. Some authenticated 1981D double die quarters in circulated condition have sold for thousands of dollars simply because so few examples exist. Imagine finding one mixed into spare change after decades of being overlooked. But there's another mystery surrounding worn 1981D quarters that collectors absolutely love. Several examples have surfaced with weak strike characteristics, caused by improper die pressure during minting. These quarters appear unusually flat or soft in certain areas, giving them an almost ghost-like appearance. Most people mistake them for ordinary wear, yet experts sometimes identify them as scarce weak strike errors from worn or damaged dies at the Denver Mint. The combination of a strange appearance and confirmed mint error can push values far beyond expectations, and then came one of the biggest shocks. A small number of 1981D quarters were reportedly discovered with partial missing clad layers. This mint error exposes more of the copper core beneath the surface, creating dull brownish or faded areas that make the coin look heavily worn in when the details remain visible. Collectors became fascinated because these coins look so different from normal quarters. Once graded and authenticated, Certain examples reached astonishing prices due to their rarity. Now here's something every viewer should remember. The worn look of a quarter does not automatically mean the coin is worthless. In fact, some of the most valuable mint errors survive only in circulated condition because they escaped into everyday use before anyone noticed the mistake. That's why experienced collectors study every detail carefully, look closely at the lettering, check the date and mint mark, examine the edge for unusual coloration or missing clad layers, and pay attention to any strange flatness or weakness in the strike. These tiny clues can reveal whether a coin is simply worn from circulation, or whether it's hiding a rare production error worth serious money. Another factor that excites collectors is originality. A naturally worn coin with untouched surfaces is often far more desirable than a cleaned or polished example. Cleaning destroys collector value because it removes the authentic history and texture that experts want to see. So if you find an unusual 1981D quarter, never scrub or polish it, and believe it or not, many valuable Washington quarters are still hiding in old jars, estate collections, glove compartments, and forgotten drawers across the country. Families spend them every day without realizing what they had in their hands. That's what makes coin collecting so thrilling. Treasure can appear where nobody expects it. So, before you dismiss that worn-looking 1981D Washington quarter as just another old coin, take a closer look. Because hidden beneath decades of circulation could be a rare mint mistake that collectors would fight to own for an unbelievable amount of money. And that is exactly what makes it so fascinating. At first glance, a 1965 Washington quarter might seem like nothing special. Millions of Americans have handled one at some point, and most people would never imagine that a coin from the mid-1960s could attract serious attention from collectors. But hidden among ordinary examples are a few remarkable pieces that have stunned the coin market. The year 1965 was a historic turning point for American coinage. Rising silver prices forced the United States Mint to stop producing regular 90% silver quarters. Instead, the mint introduced a new copper nickel-clad composition. Because of this major change, collectors pay very close attention to 1965 quarters. Any unusual example from this year immediately attracts interest. Now, let's talk about the condition of the coin you're looking at. This particular quarter appears to be in extra fine condition, despite showing some damage. The major design features are still visible. Washington's hair retains noticeable detail, the lettering remains strong, and much of the original design can still be appreciated. Even with damage, collectors often examine these coins carefully because condition is only one part of the story. On the front of the coin, you can still see the familiar portrait of President George Washington. Designed by sculptor John Flanagan, this iconic image has appeared on American quarters for generations. On the reverse, the proud eagle design remains one of the most recognizable images in U.S. coin history. But here's where things become interesting. Many collectors search through 1965 quarters, hoping to discover valuable mint errors. During the transition from silver to clad coinage, production demands were extremely high. The mint was under pressure to produce enormous numbers of coins. As a result, certain error coins escaped into circulation. These include off-center strikes, double strikes, clipped planchets, and die errors that can command impressive premiums. An ordinary damaged 1965 quarter in extra fine condition may only be worth a modest amount above face value. However, if the coin shows evidence of a genuine mint error rather than post-mint damage, its value can increase dramatically. Some authenticated error examples have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on rarity and eye appeal. Even more exciting are the legendary 1965 transitional error quarters. A small number were mistakenly struck on leftover silver planchets from 1964. These coins are among the most desirable Washington quarter rarities ever discovered. When authenticated by major grading services, examples have brought astonishing prices at auction. High-grade specimens have reached tens of thousands of dollars. And particularly exceptional examples have generated intense bidding from advanced collectors. Imagine finding what appears to be an ordinary 1965 quarter, only to learn that it was struck on the wrong metal and could be worth more than many new cars. That possibility is exactly why collectors continue searching through old collections, estate holdings, and inherited coin jars decades later. If you have a 1965 quarter, examine the edge carefully. A normal clad quarter will show a visible copper-colored layer along the edge. A transitional silver era may lack that copper stripe and weigh differently. These small details can make an enormous difference in value, while this extra fine example with damage is unlikely to reach the record-setting prices seen by rare era coins. The date alone keeps collectors interested. The 1965 Washington quarter represents one of the most important moments in modern American coinage history, and every example deserves a second look before being dismissed as ordinary pocket change. And believe it or not, the next quarter on our countdown becomes even more surprising, because the story behind it has left many collectors completely shocked. Next up, we have a Washington quarter that many people spend without a second thought, yet certain examples have become highly sought after by collectors across the country. The 1971 Washington quarter may look ordinary at first glance, but some pieces from this year have produced surprising auction results that continue to fuel excitement in the coin collecting world. What makes this coin especially interesting is its condition. This particular example appears to have an extra fine appearance, with an attractive, almost new coin look that immediately catches a collector's attention. Even though millions of 1971 quarters were produced, finding one that has survived decades with strong detail and minimal wear is becoming increasingly difficult. Take a close look at the design. The portrait of George Washington remains sharp, with noticeable detail in the hair and facial features. The lettering is bold and easy to read. On the reverse, the eagle still displays impressive feather detail, and the overall appearance suggests the coin spent very little time in circulation compared with most examples from the same year. Now, here is where things start getting exciting. Many collectors search 1971 quarters because of several known varieties and striking abnormalities that can dramatically increase value. While most examples remain common, certain coins exhibit die errors, doubled features, or unusual striking characteristics that make them stand out from the crowd. These are the discoveries that keep collectors checking every quarter that passes through their hands. A typical circulated 1971 Washington quarter may only be worth face value. An extra fine example with attractive surfaces can command a premium among collectors building high-quality date sets. Uncirculated examples with strong luster can reach significantly higher values, especially when certified by professional grading services. But the real excitement comes from exceptional specimens. In top uncirculated grades, some 1971 quarters have sold for hundreds and even thousands of dollars because so few survive in pristine condition. Collectors are willing to pay substantial premiums for coins that retain sharp details, clean surfaces, and outstanding eye appeal. A coin that appears almost new after more than 50 years instantly becomes more desirable. And then there are the rare era coins, certain dramatic 1971 era quarters featuring major die mistakes, off-center strikes, or multiple striking abnormalities have generated intense bidding whenever they appear on the market. Depending on rarity and condition, these extraordinary pieces can reach values that most people would never associate with a quarter. Imagine pulling a 1971 quarter from an old collection, assuming it's worth 25 cents, only to discover it contains a rare mint-produced characteristic that transforms it into a collector's prize. Stories like that are exactly why so many hobbyists continue searching through rolls of coins and inherited collections every year. The year 1971 also represents an interesting period in American history. The nation was experiencing major economic and cultural changes, and these quarters quietly circulated through everyday commerce, witnessing decades of American life. Today, collectors preserve the best surviving examples as small pieces of that history. If you have a 1971 quarter with a fresh appearance, check it carefully under good lighting. Look for unusually sharp details, strong luster, doubling in the lettering, or anything that appears different from a normal example. Small details can sometimes lead to very big discoveries. A standard extra fine coin with a new coin look may be worth a modest premium, while high-grade certified examples can reach thousands of dollars. Rare error specimens can climb dramatically higher, with the most extraordinary examples attracting advanced collectors willing to spend astonishing amounts to secure them. And if you're enjoying these incredible coin discoveries, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next quarter on our list takes rarity and collector excitement to an entirely different level. The value jump coming up may leave you absolutely stunned. Moving on, we come to a Washington quarter that often hides in plain sight. Most people would never stop to examine a 1968 quarter, and that is exactly why some valuable examples continue to slip through the cracks. While millions were produced and circulated across America, certain 1968 quarters have become surprisingly desirable among collectors, especially when unusual varieties or rare mint errors are involved. At first glance, this particular coin appears to be in fine condition. The design has experienced noticeable circulation wear over the years, but the major details remain visible. George Washington's portrait is still clearly recognizable, and the date can be read without difficulty. On the reverse, the eagle design remains intact even though years of handling have softened many of the finer details. Now, some collectors might immediately dismiss a coin in fine condition. That would be a mistake. The year 1968 was important because it marked the return of mint marks to American coinage after several years of their absence. Collectors pay close attention to quarters from this period because mint location can significantly influence rarity and demand. Coins struck at different facilities can show different production characteristics, and some varieties are much harder to find than others. Here's where the story gets interesting. Many valuable coin discoveries begin with pieces that look completely ordinary. A collector examines the date, studies the mint mark, checks for doubling, and suddenly realizes the coin is something far more special than expected. The 1968 quarter has produced a number of collectible varieties and striking errors that continue to attract attention today. A typical 1968 quarter in fine condition may only carry a small premium above face value. However, if the coin displays a legitimate mint error, the value can rise dramatically. Off-center strikes, die cracks, misaligned dies, and other production mistakes are all features collectors actively search for. Depending on rarity and visibility, such errors can transform a common quarter into a highly sought-after collectible. But that's only the beginning. High-grade examples of the 1968 quarter have produced impressive auction results, because relatively few survive with exceptional preservation. While this particular coin shows honest circulation wear, it still represents an important piece of American coinage history. Every scratch and worn detail reflects decades of real-world use, passing through countless hands and witnessing generations of everyday transactions. What truly excites collectors is the possibility of discovering something unusual, perhaps a doubled inscription, perhaps an overlooked die variety, or perhaps a striking error that escaped the mint and entered circulation unnoticed. These discoveries continue to happen, which is why experienced collectors inspect even heavily circulated coins. Imagine sorting through an old family collection and spotting a worn 1968 quarter. Most people would toss it into a change jar without another thought. Yet a knowledgeable collector might recognize a rare feature that turns that same coin into a remarkable find. Stories like these are one of the reasons coin collecting remains so exciting. For ordinary examples in fine condition, values generally remain modest. Better preserved uncirculated examples can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars when certified in top grades. Rare error specimens can climb much higher, with exceptional examples attracting aggressive bidding from serious collectors. In extraordinary circumstances, unique pieces have generated values that seem almost unbelievable for a coin originally worth just 25 cents. So, before you overlook a worn 1968 quarter, take a closer look. Check the date, inspect the mint mark, and examine every detail carefully. Sometimes the most surprising treasures are hidden inside the coins that appear the least impressive, and don't go anywhere. Because the final quarter in today's countdown is the one that collectors dream about finding. Its story, rarity, and potential value have left even experienced numismatists completely speechless. And now, we've reached the final coin in today's countdown. And this is where things get truly unbelievable. If you've stayed with us this far, you're about to discover why some collectors spend years searching through old coin collections, hoping to uncover a hidden treasure. Our final coin is the 1986p Washington quarter, a coin that most Americans have seen countless times, but very few have ever examined closely. At first glance, this particular example appears to be in extra fine condition. The details on George Washington's portrait remain strong. Much of the original design is clearly visible, and the overall appearance suggests the coin has avoided heavy wear throughout its life. But what immediately stands out is the unusual brown color shade on the obverse or front side of the coin. Now, before anyone gets too excited, color alone does not automatically make a coin valuable. Toning can occur naturally over time as a coin reacts to its environment. However, unusual coloration often encourages collectors to investigate further, and sometimes that closer inspection leads to remarkable discoveries. The year 1986 was significant for American coinage. The United States was celebrating its heritage, the economy was growing, and Washington quarters continued to circulate in enormous numbers across the country. Because so many were produced, most people assume every 1986p quarter is common. That assumption has caused countless potentially valuable coins to be overlooked. Take a closer look at the design. George Washington's portrait still displays attractive detail, especially for a circulated coin. The lettering remains sharp, and the date is easy to read. On the reverse, the eagle continues to show strong definition, making this an appealing example for collectors who appreciate well-preserved coins from the modern era. But here is where the story becomes fascinating. Collectors searching through 1986p quarters often look for striking errors, double dies, off-center strikes, die cracks, and other unusual production characteristics. Most quarters leave the mint exactly as intended. A small number do not. Those are the coins that can send shockwaves through the collecting community. Imagine finding a quarter in an old drawer, noticing an unusual color, and deciding to take a closer look. Under magnification, you discover a genuine mint-produced error that had gone unnoticed for decades. Suddenly, what seemed like an ordinary coin becomes the centerpiece of a collection. A standard 1986p quarter in circulated condition is generally worth face value. An extra fine example with strong detail and attractive eye appeal can bring a premium among collectors. Higher-grade uncirculated examples become much more desirable, particularly when certified by professional grading services. Then come the elite survivors. In exceptional mint state grades, some 1986p quarters have achieved impressive auction prices because finding flawless examples is far more difficult than most people realize. Collectors compete fiercely for coins that combine sharp strikes, attractive surfaces, and outstanding preservation. And when a rare error enters the picture, the numbers can become astonishing. Major mint errors from this era have sold for thousands, tens of thousands, and in extraordinary circumstances, even more. Unique combinations of rarity, condition, and collector demand can create values that seem impossible for a coin with a face value of just 25 cents. Some elite modern rarities have crossed price levels that few casual collectors would ever expect. That's why experienced collectors never judge a coin by appearance alone. They examine every detail, every letter, every design element, and every unusual characteristic. Sometimes the smallest clue leads to the biggest discovery. If you own a 1986p Washington quarter with a brown color shade on the front, examine it carefully under proper lighting. Look for unusual strike characteristics, signs of doubling, missing design elements, or anything that appears different from a normal example. While the color may simply be natural toning, it could also be the reason someone takes a second look and notices something far more important. Today's countdown proves an incredible point. Valuable coins are not always ancient rarities locked away in museum collections. Sometimes they are sitting unnoticed in old coin jars, inherited albums, desk drawers, or forgotten boxes. The difference between an ordinary quarter and an extraordinary one often comes down to a detail most people never notice. Which of these Washington quarters surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, the next life-changing coin discovery could already be in your collection, waiting for the moment you decide to take a closer look. If you enjoyed today's treasure hunt, subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, turn on notifications, and join us for more unbelievable stories of hidden coin riches. Until next time, keep searching, because you never know when 25 cents could turn into a fortune. 67 Washington quarter looks like an ordinary coin from the pocket change era. Millions of people spent them, saved them in jars, and forgot about them for decades. But what if one of those forgotten quarters turned out to be worth far more than 25 cents? The year 1967 was an interesting time in American coinage history. The United States Mint was still dealing with a nationwide coin shortage, and because of that, mint marks were temporarily removed from circulating coins. That means every genuine 1967 Washington quarter was struck without a mint mark. While that may sound ordinary, it created a unique chapter in American coin collecting that continues to fascinate collectors today. Take a close look at your 1967 quarter. The first thing collectors examine is the condition. On an extra fine example, much of the original design detail remains visible. Washington's hair should still show strong separation above the ear, and many of the finer lines around the portrait remain sharp. On the reverse, the eagle should display noticeable feather detail with only light wear on the highest points. Coins that survived nearly 60 years in this kind of condition are becoming increasingly difficult to find. Now here's where things start getting interesting. Most circulated 1967 quarters are worth only a modest premium over face value. However, when a coin survives in extra fine condition, collectors begin paying closer attention. The value can rise significantly depending on eye appeal, surface quality, and originality. A beautiful, extra fine example can attract serious interest from collectors seeking high-quality coins from the late 1960s. But condition alone isn't the whole story. Some 1967 Washington quarters were struck with remarkable mint errors. These include off-center strikes, doubled die varieties, clipped planchets, and dramatic die cracks. When one of these rare errors appears on a well-preserved coin, the value can jump from a few dollars to thousands of dollars almost overnight. Imagine finding a 1967 quarter with a strong double design visible in key areas of the coin. Collectors have been known to compete fiercely for unusual examples, because these mistakes escaped the mint and entered circulation unnoticed. Decades later, they continue to surprise collectors and treasure hunters alike. And then there are the truly elite examples. A nearly perfect 1967 Washington quarter with exceptional preservation can command astonishing prices. Professional grading services carefully examine every detail, and when a coin earns one of the highest grades available, collectors often battle for the opportunity to own it. Some premium examples have reached values that would leave most people completely speechless. Think about that for a moment. A quarter originally worth just 25 cents could potentially be worth thousands, tens of thousands, and under extraordinary circumstances, even more. That's the kind of discovery that keeps collectors searching through old coin collections every single day. Before you move on to the next coin, take a few moments to inspect any 1967 quarters you may have at home. Look closely at the date. Examine the details in Washington's hair. Check the eagle on the reverse, and search for unusual doubling or striking errors. You never know what might be hiding in plain sight. And if you're enjoying these incredible coin discoveries so far, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because the next Washington quarter on our list has shocked collectors with values that climb even higher. Just when it seems impossible for an ordinary-looking Washington quarter to become even more surprising, the next coin on our list proves why collectors never stop searching through old change. The 1982D Washington quarter is a coin that many people overlook. After all, it was produced during a period when quarters were everywhere. Millions entered circulation, and most were spent without a second thought. But today, finding a well-preserved example from this year has become more challenging than many collectors expected. This particular coin is a 1982D Washington quarter in fine condition. At this grade, the coin has seen honest circulation over the years. Washington's portrait still remains clear, but noticeable wear appears on the higher parts of the design. The lettering and date remain readable, and the eagle on the reverse still displays its major features. Although many finer details have faded from decades of use, what makes the 1982D quarter especially interesting is the historical period in which it was struck. During the early 1980s, coin collecting activity was lower than it had been in previous decades. Because fewer people were saving rolls and bags of quarters, many coins entered circulation and stayed there. As a result, high-quality examples became surprisingly scarce years later. Now, here's where collectors start paying very close attention. Not every 1982D quarter is valuable, but certain examples have generated tremendous excitement in the collecting community. Coins showing unusual die varieties, striking abnormalities, or dramatic mint errors can command impressive premiums. A simple-looking quarter can transform into a collector's prize if it displays the right characteristics. Imagine discovering a 1982D quarter with a significant off-center strike. Suddenly, coin worth only face value becomes something entirely different. The same is true for strong die cracks, clipped planchets, and other mint-produced mistakes. These errors occurred during the manufacturing process and escaped into circulation, creating fascinating treasures for modern collectors. Another feature collectors watch closely is the overall quality of the strike. Some 1982D quarters display sharper than average details, while others reveal subtle characteristics that make specialists take a second look. Because millions of coins were produced under varying conditions, finding exceptional examples remains a challenge. But the biggest surprises often come from certified high-grade specimens. While a fine condition example serves as an important reminder of what circulated American coinage looked like during the early 1980s. Pristine examples have shocked the market with remarkable auction results. Coins preserved in extraordinary condition can command values far beyond what most people would ever imagine for a quarter. Think about the journey of this coin. It may have passed through countless cash registers, vending machines, pockets, and piggy banks. It may have bought a cup of coffee, paid for a newspaper, or disappeared into a forgotten drawer decades ago. Yet collectors continue searching for examples, because they know that hidden among ordinary quarters are pieces with extraordinary stories. This is exactly why experienced collectors never judge a coin by appearance alone. A worn quarter may not look impressive at first glance, but it can still hold historical significance and sometimes even unexpected value. So, if you come across a 1982D Washington quarter, don't dismiss it too quickly. Check the date carefully. Look for unusual features. Examine both sides under good lighting. Search for doubling, striking errors, and other characteristics that might separate it from the millions of ordinary examples, because the next coin on our countdown takes the excitement to another level. As incredible as the 1982D quarter may seem, the Washington quarter coming up next has stunned collectors with values that climb even higher and has become one of the most talked about discoveries among modern coin hunters. If you thought the previous quarters were surprising, wait until you see what happens when collectors come across a 1974 Washington quarter that still looks almost new after more than 50 years. At first glance, a 1974 Washington quarter may not seem like anything special. Millions of Americans handled these coins during the 1970s. They were used for groceries, gas stations, restaurants, and everyday purchases across the country. Most people spent them without a second thought. But today, finding one in extra fine condition with an unusually fresh appearance can instantly grab a collector's attention. Take a close look at this 1974 quarter. Even though it shows slight evidence of circulation, much of the original detail remains remarkably sharp. Washington's hair still displays strong definition, The lettering appears crisp, and many of the finer design elements remain visible. What makes this coin especially attractive is its overall eye appeal. When a coin from 1974 still carries a bright, nearly new appearance, collectors immediately take notice. The story behind this coin becomes even more interesting when you consider its age. More than 5 decades have passed since it left the United States Mint. During that time, countless quarters from this year suffered heavy wear, scratches, environmental damage, and neglect. That's why examples that survive with strong detail and attractive surfaces continue to stand out. Now, here comes the part that gets collectors excited. The 1974 Washington quarter is one of those dates that can occasionally surprise people when unusual mint characteristics are discovered. Certain examples have been found with dramatic strike errors, off-center strikes, die cracks, and other production abnormalities. These mint-created mistakes transform an ordinary quarter into something collectors eagerly pursue. Imagine searching through an old coin collection and finding a 1974 quarter with a major mint error hiding in plain sight. What appears to be an everyday coin could suddenly become the centerpiece of a collection. That's exactly why experienced collectors examine every detail carefully instead of focusing only on the date. Another factor that influences value is the quality of preservation. Extra fine examples already attract more attention than heavily worn pieces, but coins that maintain an unusually fresh appearance often generate even greater interest. Collectors appreciate originality, and a coin that still looks impressive after decades in existence can be surprisingly difficult to locate. Then there are the elite examples that have stunned the collecting world. Professional grading services occasionally encounter 1974 quarters preserved at extraordinarily high levels. These coins show exceptional detail, strong luster, and outstanding eye appeal. When rare errors combine with superior preservation, values can rise dramatically. What started as a simple 25-cent coin can suddenly become worth hundreds, thousands, or even far more when the right combination of rarity and condition is present. Just imagine the excitement of discovering that a quarter sitting unnoticed in a coin album, old drawer, or inherited collection could be worth far beyond its face value. Those discoveries happen more often than most people realize, and they are one reason coin collecting remains such a fascinating hobby. The lesson from the 1974 Washington quarter is simple. Never assume a common date means a common coin. Condition matters. Eye appeal matters. Mint errors matter. And sometimes, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance turns out to be anything but ordinary. Take a moment to check any 1974 quarters you have at home. Look closely at the surfaces. Examine the lettering. Study the details around Washington's portrait and the eagle on the reverse. Search for anything unusual, because one small detail can make all the difference. And don't go anywhere, because the next Washington quarter on our countdown pushes the excitement even further. The values become even more astonishing. The rarity becomes even more impressive. And the story behind the next coin is one that every collector dreams of discovering. Now, we're moving into the part of the countdown where things start getting truly exciting. The next coin is a 1981D Washington quarter. And this is exactly the kind of coin that many people overlook because it appears so ordinary at first glance. But as collectors have learned time and time again, ordinary-looking coins can sometimes produce extraordinary surprises. This particular 1981D quarter stands out because it has a remarkably fresh appearance while still fitting within a fine condition range. Even after more than 4 decades, the coin retains attractive eye appeal that immediately catches the attention of anyone familiar with Washington quarters. The design remains clear, the date is bold, and the overall appearance suggests a coin that survived the years better than many of its counterparts. The Denver Mint produced millions of quarters in 1981, and most entered circulation almost immediately. They passed through countless hands, cash registers, vending machines, and banks across America. Because of this heavy use, many examples became worn, damaged, or simply disappeared from collectors' attention. That's why attractive survivors continue to draw interest today. When examining a 1981D quarter, collectors first focus on the condition of Washington's portrait. Even moderate wear can remove important design details over time. On a more attractive example, however, much of the design remains visible and pleasing. The reverse side deserves just as much attention. The eagle lettering and rim should be carefully inspected for detail, strike quality, and any unusual characteristics. But here's where things begin to get interesting. Some 1981D Washington quarters have been discovered with mint-made errors that dramatically increase collector demand. These include off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and doubling that occur during production. While such examples are uncommon, they remind collectors why every quarter deserves a careful inspection. Imagine sorting through a jar of old coins and spotting a quarter that looks slightly different from the rest. Maybe the strike appears unusual. Maybe part of the design seems doubled. Maybe there's a striking flaw that occurred during minting. Those are the discoveries that transform an ordinary afternoon of coin searching into an unforgettable moment. Collectors also understand that appearance matters. A coin that still looks bright and attractive decades after it was minted often receives more attention than one with dull surfaces or heavy wear. Eye appeal can make a tremendous difference when buyers compete for desirable examples. And then there are the premium specimens that have generated headlines among collectors. When a 1981D Washington quarter survives in exceptionally high grades with outstanding detail and strong original surfaces, values can rise far beyond what most people expect. Add a significant mint error into the equation, and the results can be astonishing. Some rare combinations of condition and error characteristics have brought prices that leave collectors shaking their heads in disbelief. Think about it. A coin originally worth only 25 cents could potentially become worth hundreds, thousands, or even much more under the right circumstances. That's the magic of coin collecting. Hidden value often exists where people least expect it. If you've been enjoying these incredible Washington quarter discoveries, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries and have notifications turned on. New valuable coin stories are constantly emerging, and you never know when the next one could involve a coin sitting right in your own collection. As exciting as the 1981D quarter may be, we're not finished yet. The final coin on this countdown is the one that truly raises the stakes. Its story is even more fascinating, its collector demand is even stronger, and its potential value has shocked coin enthusiasts across the country. You won't want to miss what's coming next. And now, we've reached the final coin on today's countdown. The coin that proves why millions of Americans continue checking their pocket change. Old coin albums and inherited collections every single year. At first glance, this 1972 Washington quarter may not look like a treasure. In fact, this example is in fine condition and even shows a few signs of damage from years of circulation. To most people, that would seem like enough reason to overlook it completely. But experienced collectors know something important. Sometimes the most surprising discoveries come from the coins that appear the least impressive. The 1972 Washington quarter was produced during a busy period in American coinage. Millions were struck and released into circulation, where they quickly became part of everyday life. They bought groceries, paid tolls, and passed through countless hands across the country. Because they were so common, very few people thought about saving them. More than 50 years later, that decision continues to create fascinating opportunities for collectors. When examining a fine condition 1972 quarter, the first thing you'll notice is moderate wear throughout the design. Washington's portrait remains visible, but many of the finer details have softened over time. The reverse eagle still shows its overall shape, although some feather detail has worn away through decades of use. This kind of honest wear tells the story of a coin that actually served its purpose in American commerce. Now, let's talk about the damage. Many collectors automatically assume that a damaged coin has no value. While damage can certainly reduce collector interest in many cases, it also forces experts to look more carefully. That's because what appears to be damage isn't always damage. Sometimes unusual marks, distortions, or irregular features can actually be the result of a mint error rather than post-mint wear. This is where things become truly exciting. Certain 1972. Washington quarters have been discovered with striking abnormalities, dramatic die cracks, off-center strikes, and other mint-produced errors that completely transform their desirability. To an untrained eye, some of these features may simply look like flaws. To a knowledgeable collector, they can represent something far more important. Imagine finding a 1972 quarter that appears damaged, only to discover that the unusual feature occurred during the minting process itself. Suddenly, what looked like an ordinary worn coin becomes a fascinating piece of mint history. These are exactly the kinds of discoveries that keep collectors searching through thousands of quarters. Year after year, the 1972 issue also attracts attention because high-grade examples have become increasingly difficult to locate. While many coins circulated heavily, small numbers survived with exceptional preservation. When collectors encounter those rare, top-quality specimens, competition can become intense. And now comes the moment that every coin hunter dreams about. While a typical fine-condition 1972 quarter is usually modest in value, rare error examples and elite certified specimens have produced astonishing results in the collector market. Under the right circumstances, values can climb into the thousands of dollars. Exceptional examples with highly desirable characteristics have generated incredible excitement whenever they appear for sale. Just think about that. A coin that many people would toss into a change jar without a second thought could potentially be hiding a story worth far more than its face value. That's why successful collectors never judge a coin too quickly. Before we finish today's countdown, remember these important clues for identifying potentially valuable Washington quarters. Always check the date carefully. Look for unusual doubling in the design. Examine the rims for off-center strikes. Search for die cracks, clipped planchets, and other mint-made errors. Pay attention to overall condition, because preservation can make a tremendous difference in collector demand. And most importantly, never assume that an ordinary-looking quarter cannot be special. Today's 5 Washington quarters have shown us exactly why this hobby remains so exciting. From the 1967 quarter that emerged from the coin shortage era, to the 1982D survivor, the attractive 1970, for example, the eye-catching 1981D quarter, and finally, this fascinating 1972 coin. Each one tells a unique story of American history and hidden value. The next time you receive change, open an old coin jar, or sort through a family collection, take a closer look. The quarter sitting in your hand might not be worth just 25 cents. It could be the discovery that every collector dreams about. Thanks for watching us Mint Mysteries. If you enjoyed this countdown, be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment telling us which Washington quarter surprised you the most. And remember, some of America's greatest coin treasures are still waiting to be found.